David Tanner kind of came around and just handed out these letters to people in the crew room. And the letters were basically, we've nominated you to the British Olympic team. But the letter said something like, we nominated you to the British Olympic team, but your selection is still contingent on the performance director's appraisal of your performance. Anyway, I went home and wrote my own letter to the people that didn't get selected. And I kind of wrote it on a black piece of paper with white letters and basically said, it's my greatest honor to select you for the Shadow Squad 2016.
Yes.
You've worked really hard for the last few years, and you might not have made the Olympic team, but please be aware that your membership of the Shadow Squad is contingent on your performance not getting any better.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today's guest is a world champion, the boat race winner, an Olympian. Please welcome Ollie Cook to the podcast.
Great to be here, guys.
Thanks for coming, man. I know I say this a lot, but literally since we finished rowing together, we've been trying to get a meet up, and this seems to finally be the reason why we've managed to get it to happen.
And I can personally testify this coffee has been worth the 10-year wait.
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it? When you get out of rowing, but your mates are still in it, it's just like two different worlds. That
I know.
Very briefly.
And occasionally come across each other at Caversham when you're doing the entire fleet of row machines and basically repairing the immense amount of damage that gets done on them.
Yeah, but it's keeping me in business, basically. Yeah.
Good. Okay. I remember the next time I whip the chain.
Yeah. Lots to get into. Loads of other little exciting things. Obviously, an amazing career with the GB team, but the boat race with your brother. Also rowed with your brother, and coached your younger brother as well. And
I know
Pete has rowed with him. So
we did a Henley campaign together.
Not that we'll spend too much talking about them.
Yeah. Just a quick announcement before we get into the show.
Yeah.
If you'd like to support us, you can do so by going to buymeacoffee.com/laststrokecounts or check out our Patreon. We got some bonuses and great stuff in there. See if you like it.
Yeah. Just if you feel like it, if you like what we're doing and you want to see a bit more, we don't, and lots of people say, oh, how are you making money on this yet? Like, we don't make any money. We don't have any sponsorships. We don't have any plans to do any YouTube ads because I find them incredibly annoying. So, if we can get a couple of quid and maybe get further afield to see some other guests, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'd love to go and check out Head of the Charles, maybe go to Croatia, speak to the Sinkoviches, that sort of thing.
That sounds so epic. Definitely. Yeah. I will. And I can say that the coffee is worth it. The coffee you guys make, it's really worth it.
Awesome. Right, let's get into it. I love to find out, how did you find rowing in the first place?
How did I find rowing kind of in its totality as a sport,
how did you get into it? What sports were you into? Sports before rowing, or was that the one that clicked?
Yeah, I was. I think rugby was probably for like a lot of rowers. Yeah. Rugby was sort of first love, I think, and the thing I really enjoyed doing. And in terms of kind of how did I get into rowing? How did I kind of start? It was my dad, who I think had seen me get injured a few times. So I dislocated both my kind of collarbones and had kind of done various things to my thumbs. I guess it's rugby. And I think he had decided trying to find another sport that was less intense on the sort of injury front.
So you went for rowing.
So here I am, hunched down with my back in a curved position, as it will be for the rest of my life. So that's how I kind of started. Is he set up there was a rowing club in Windsor called Eastern Excelsior Rowing Club, and I think they'd had a junior rowing program way back when, but he kind of came in and kind of restarted it. So I was one of the first kind of group of juniors when I was sort of 12, 13. So it was 12, 13. So I was playing kind of rugby at that age. I kind of had been injured a couple of times, and he was just keen that I had a sport in the summer. I was useless at cricket. I played in the bottom team all the time. My hand-eye coordination is as much to be desired. Rowing was something that I kind of got into then.
It's funny. I literally emailed Eton Excelsior today. They're trying to get their equipment sorted. They don't have a full budget, so we're just trying to work out what we can fix and not fix.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
strange
cool.
timing. Yeah.
That is funny. Out of all the clubs you could be, it's a lovely stretch of river and a really good local club.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a good time.
So how old were you when you roughly first stepped foot in the boat?
I think I was 12. I think my first race was Burway International. No, it was just Burway. So it's very not international. It was just people from about a 5 mile radius. And I was in a single and I capsized. It was only one race. I think it was a sort of under 13 single sculls race. And I hadn't put my blades in, hadn't done the gates up. So I remember getting to the start line and seeing that my gates were still undone and thinking, okay, I'll just have to row really like horizontally. And took maybe about a minute into the race. The other guy I was racing had already was already kind of a couple of lengths up. And I then just sort of capsized. Both my blades came out of this and I just turned the boat over and then had to get back in the boat, finish the race. Obviously the other guy had won. And that was my first race.
That wasn't rage quitting, as the kids these days would call it.
I remember the guy. He was really cool. He got to the start line and he like looked across. I mean, at age 12, and he didn't realize that my gate was undone, or maybe he did, and that's why he did this. But he turned his cap around. He had it like this, and he turned it around like that. And I just watched a Sylvester Stallone movie. I can't remember what it's called, where it is arm wrestling movie, and he does that as like when he's just about to win an arm wrestle. He like turns his cap around like that way, and then like pummels the other person. He's a truck driver, so he goes across the states just doing arm wrestling in his truck. And I remember that this guy, age 12 or 13, him doing that to me, and me being like, oh,
he was trying
really cool. It's like so, and he did. Obviously, they won, and they capsized.
He was trying to psych you out. It worked.
I mean, I thought I was doomed anyway. But yeah, that was my first race.
I remember the first singles race I ever had. Absolutely crapping myself. It's up at Nat Schools, like on the Sunday of Nat Schools, I guess, or something. And it was like next 3 through to the next round.
Yeah.
And then our heat didn't have 6, it only had 5. So I was like, okay, that's good. And then when I got to the start, one guy didn't even show up. So I was like, I've only got to beat one. Yeah. Still like really nervous. And then 3 strokes in, the guy in the lane next to me falls in. I was like, I've made it! I'm in!
You got a fight.
That was quite funny. The first time I ever raced in a single, that was Polish Champs 2013, right before the start of my first qualifying race. I capsized like 10 minutes before. And then I just remember, I was just sat down and just going over my race plan in my head and then just, I don't know, I must have like lost control of the blade or something. Next 2 seconds, I find myself in the water, and I've never been so determined to like get back in the boat, and I've raced and I didn't come last in that. So that was good.
Just you saying that now has now reminded me, like when you first started to rowing, there's no dreams of winning. It was don't come last.
Yeah.
Like, that was like,
I think that
was enough to be like, yes.
So maybe something we could talk about over the kind of rest of the conversation, but that kind of what drives you? Is it driving to win, or is it driving to not lose? I mean, I do agree. Maybe it's when you're starting out, it was a sort of, please don't be embarrassing, as it was like the minimum standard. Yeah. Of course, then capsizing it was quite embarrassing, but that was always what I was really worried was the sort of something kind of going wrong or kind of nothing else to it.
It's okay as long as you get back in the boat and you finish the race. And
get back on the horse.
Yeah.
So then I take it then secondary school was obviously when things started to get a bit more serious.
I went to Abingdon. A great rowing school. And yeah, really kind of great school, lots of kind of value placed on that kind of other half side of things and just like schoolwork. And so really loved that kind of environment. And yeah, definitely kind of rowing was a big part of what I did at school, as well as playing rugby and kind of doing some other things as well. And yeah, I think we weren't maybe always that good. We were kind of top 3 around that kind of time. But I remember sort of 2006, so I was 16, we were doing GCSEs, and Matt Roster, who had just kind of made the A boat in that year. Sorry, the year before, just suddenly started getting really, really good at rowing. And so I felt like I had this position where I was the guy that had rowed before school. and so kind of had this sort of the rowing's kind of my thing. I remember doing a school kind of university, not university, as a mastermind, and my specialist topic was rowing, which was the saddest thing in the world. And the very first question I got asked by the deputy headmaster was kind of, how many people are in an 8-man rowing boat? And so I went, well, 8, obviously. Yeah, and I still to this day, I'll be, but I remember kind of, sort of that J16 boat, Matt just started becoming a kind of phenomenon. And he then kind of lower 6th year, then went into Junior Worlds and won Junior Worlds. I remember watching the kind of tracker because it didn't have a live feed then. And just thinking, this is the most amazing guy. This guy's just won Junior Worlds. How incredible is that? And then he still had another year of us at school and he was kind of a superstar. And so I think all of us around us were kind of very much sort of, where do we kind of fit in terms of, it was definitely Matt's kind of the guy at school. He's going to go to the Olympics. And, I then did, Coop, Matt did under 23s. A guy called Gus Raftery did.
Did you do Coop in your final year or the year before?
Final year.
So 2008?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So because 2007 was like Al Webb and Will Satcher.
Yeah.
I didn't make 2007. But yeah, even outside of Abingdon, like everyone knew that Matt Oster was the guy, like in the junior system. Like I remember getting invited to a pairs trial, like junior trial day at Dorney, and like seeing him first. And he had his Oakley's glasses like on his head, but like backwards. You know how some people wear them backwards? I was just like, oh, he's the man. The drill.
I remember that. I remember doing a pair with him in lower 6th year to do Nantes training camp. Anyway, he pulled me across the entire lake and against the prevailing wind. And then I was quickly dropped from being a pair with him into a pair with somebody else.
Is that because he was steering though? So he was like using...
I had the steering and I didn't. He was steering against himself the whole way. But that was a kind of sort of the trajectory where I remember finishing school, kind of doing my last 5K at school and thinking, that's it. Done my last 5K. I've done my last ever 2K ago test. And that's it. I'm looking forward to kind of a gap year. I'm heading to South Africa. That's it for rowing. Yeah, I'm really happy with my kind of time as kind of rowing. Hey, we didn't win the Princess Elizabeth, which we really wanted to do. But we kind of did the best we could. And I just remember thinking, that's it. Great. So that's me done for rowing.
No one gets out. No one gets out alive. I mean, we've had this conversation so many times.
I mean, how fascinating that like you used to row like Matt back in the junior years, and like back then you had no idea that you'd eventually end up sharing the same boat at the start line of the Olympics.
No, I think that's it's still a bit of a pinch me moment. I think how our sort of careers kind of came together, and I just think I've been so lucky to be able to have the career that I've had, and been involved kind of at the right time, and also to be sort of part of Matt's story and see what, as an athlete, I just know how good he is. And I absolutely, at school, I remember having that conversation kind of after you have a few drinks after you get knocked out at Henley's. We got knocked out on a Friday, so we were all a bit kind of frustrated, but we got beaten by Shawnigan Lake in 2008, who went on to win. And I remember the 5-seat, that guy, he was like hairy and just looked like a man. And I think, of course, we're going to get beaten by these guys. They're basically the Canadian 8, Olympic 8, that've come to race us. And I remember just thinking, okay, well, Matt's kind of, he's heading off to Beijing to kind of watch the Olympics, and London's definitely on his radar. And I was sort of, that for me was kind of, I kind of done with rowing at that point. So school was kind of a great time, but for me it was kind of almost, I think schoolboy rowing is quite intense. And I think it's only got more intense. And I think then, even then I was like, okay, that's me kind of done. I want to do other things.
I think, like, I know you mentioned Matt, but like just in terms of the other names that come out of that era, obviously Rory Copus, who's involved in coxing, his brother Jamie, Matt's brother George.
Yeah.
Who else came out of Aberdeen around that era? There's quite a few names.
Yeah. Vass, I think.
Yeah.
So the school got really good. I don't know if it's correlated with me leaving. I think there was so then my brother's a couple of years younger, and they had a really good, they kind of raced into the final, had a really good team. And I think they were just building this kind of machine a little bit, and then they had a really good run of results and some great kind of rowers and the way they were rowing as well.
It takes time to build. Coincidentally, I was at Aberdeen School yesterday as well, fixing some equipment there randomly.
That thing is like a name drop, and maybe you're just going to go pick them up.
They've just got Phil Gray this year, who's come up from who was at UL for a while, so I think it'd be interesting. Mark Earnshaw as well, obviously, is heading it up there. So yeah, it could be good to see. Although I don't know what's going to happen this summer. No one's had a lot of water time so far. Obviously,
At least no one's had water.
Yeah.
So
it's
I think
quite
there's a level playing field.
Unless you're Eton and you own your own lake, I think that could be the clincher this year.
Yeah, but they don't always win.
Never
So somehow other people do kind of make it work. Yeah, to work it out.
So for most people, I sort of generally say, so having loved rowing, was your move to uni or whatever influenced by rowing? But I guess for you, it was not. It was like put that one down and go and do some other stuff. Yeah,
I was really excited. So I was going to go teach at a school in South Africa, do the kind of classic gappy thing, and was really looking forward to it. Went to the school, St Andrew's College, so also kind of a really good rowing school in South Africa, and I think for me, I was kind of, I'm done with rowing. But when I got there, I was really enjoying sort of working at the school, and I was also spending the kind of day working at this township primary school called Good Shepherd Primary School, and in the afternoons, kind of doing a bit of coaching. And then there was also, it's very much like a uni town, so it's a kind of small town in South Africa, Grahamstown, and there's a uni there called Rhodes University, and they've got quite a good rowing program as well, and a good rugby team. So I ended up playing rugby for Rhodes University.
And
they were taking that very seriously. I remember my first rugby game, I caught the ball off the kickoff. We were playing Grahamstown Police Force. And I caught the ball. I was really kind of wet under the ear. It was like, I'd only been there for maybe 6 weeks. And so done a few training sessions. It was a kind of pre-season. And I caught the ball and I got knocked out by their winger who kind of tackled me. And I kind of woke up on the floor and had this guy standing over me saying, basically, sort of swear word, pommy. And then fast forward sort of 2 hours later, and we're in the bar together, and he's kind of his arm around me. And he's, I think that kind of culture of like rough and tumble is very much like part of South Africa, and I loved that. And I think then kind of found myself getting a little bit back into rowing. Loved the coaching side of it, and loved the people that I met. Just had a bit of a just amazing year. I kind of worked did a load of random things. I worked at the bar, worked for the National Library of the Blind. So if you're someone who takes out the biography of Hansie Cronje, the cricket player, and you're probably likely to either be a massive cricket fan or kind of Afrikaans, you're going to hear quite a posh English boy getting all the wrong pronunciations for this guy's name and career in this sort of audiobook. And then
so you were doing the full audiobook.
It's a full audiobook.
I was going to say, like a library for the blind. I was like, is that just like books in Braille?
Oh, no, like an audiobook. Sorry, I wasn't very clear. No, it's like an audiobook. So you just listen to it. And you got to do all these things where you're kind of cutting out all the ums and ahs, which I do loads of. Just had a really fun time and rowed and raced against Pete Lambert at the Grand Val Regatta in Pretoria. We beat them to win the Grand Challenge Cup.
Nice.
And it's got this big kink in it. That was just a great year. And actually, there was a really cool thing where Matt Stein, after the under-23s, came and joined me in South Africa. We kind of just made our way up with another friend called Ollie from South Africa, just taking local transport through Zimbabwe, Zambia, and then climbed Kilimanjaro. And that was, just a really fun trip. And so then I guess to sort of weave it together, I then started at LSE, and I had no intentions of rowing. I went down to the boat club in kind of that freshers period. I remember the captain then being like, "Oh yeah, you're from Abingdon, right?" I said, yeah, I'm from Abingdon. He's like, "Oh, well, you could have asked Matt Ross to come." I was like, "Okay, yeah, no, this is Matt's team. This is not my so I went and played rugby for my kind of first year and first 2 turns. Had a really good time, loved it. There's a really good group of rugby guys, but kind of felt that once I'd done a couple of terms, that was it with rugby. There was no like. This is the thing that probably gets under your skin with rowing, I think, is this challenge. The rowing, you can see the challenge. It's like a mountain to climb and you can kind of see it. Whereas kind of playing rugby, it was really fun. But we kind of mainly kind of lived for the sort of Wednesday nights, basically. And that was almost the bigger deal. Whereas I kind of was looking, I'd done that, even though for a couple of terms, I just felt, and there was this Brian Young.
Shout out, legend.
Just, he needs a much more of a shout. I mean, he's responsible basically for this entire next chapter. From here on in, it's Brian Young. And so Brian, if you're listening, thanks very much.
I'm joking. There's another one that when he did some coaching for our European in 2012, and I remember him talking about like, I'm done. I'm like stepping away from coaching. And then like a few years ago, I heard that he's like back in doing like selection for the trophies. And I was like, no one gets out.
So as someone who doesn't know who Brian Young is, can you give us a bit of a background on?
Oh wow. So Brian, the voice in my head saying, do the accent. And I'm not going to do the accent. No, because I can't, because every accent I do I completely botch it. It's really rude.
I do the same, but it doesn't stop me.
No, he's former Irish lightweight. And he then, I think UL was one of his first coaching jobs. So he was kind of scarily quite young, actually, which I now realize. But at the time, when you're kind of in your early 20s, you just assume that anyone who's in their mid to late 20s is just old.
An actual adult.
A man.
Yeah. A real person.
So I think, and he was really scared. I think he was kind of younger than I am now. He was doing all the stuff that we did. But he kind of really, I think, brought UL back from a period of time where they were kind of underperforming to a period where they had a really good system going. And I was just super lucky to be kind of almost at the receiving end of that a little bit at that time, and to kind of really kind of help, I think, be part of leading that forward, which was awesome. He's gone on to now do various stuff with GB Rowing, particularly under 23s, and I think he's a brilliant personal developer. I think he's really good at understanding kind of what motivates people, kind of what people need. So I'm sure we'll touch on him kind of as we chat, but I think he was the kind of the right person for me at that time. He kind of understood that I was really looking for something more and something a bit of a challenge. He kind of understood the rugby thing and understood I kind of wanted to get out of my system a little bit, but kind of was like, he also was just like, hey, well, rowing is more hardcore than that. And so I actually turned to Brian a lot during kind of the subsequent 10 years, I suppose, as someone just for counsel. He would hate all of this, by the way. He would absolutely hate listening to this and hearing kind of, he doesn't like
force him on.
Doesn't like compliments. You should, but he would be a great person to chat to.
All right, I've got another. I think this is something you could clear up. This is another one of these little mythical stories, but I've heard it from a few different people, and I'm sure you were either involved or you definitely know about it. The time when there was a party at the UL boathouse, and some random person like turned up. And then, I don't know, or tried to nick something, and then they ran away. Someone chased them and like rugby tackles them to the ground. Was that you who rugby tackled? And they end up like knocking themselves out.
How much do you know about the story? Because have you just baited me into telling the story that I...
Okay, so the story... so you know the story.
I do know the story.
Is it you? Was it you who...
It was me. It was me.
This is the problem with doing this.
Maybe I just kind of completely implicated myself. Is this that?
No, I'm sure not. No, the strange thing about doing this podcast is there are so many things that like I've heard from Rome, but that you don't know how much is true and who said what, and so get down to the bottom of it.
Well, the story there is that my brother at the time was on his gap year and he was working for Abercrombie, and he decided it would be a really good idea to have a New Year's party. We'd invite all the models from Abercrombie and all the models from Jack Wills together and make it the official party. He got in loads of trouble for calling it the official. Of course, no, my brother, he just went ahead anyway and did it. And he kind of sells all these tickets, or like just sort of had all these people who said they were going to come, basically. And he'd gone around and kind of got people to get. And it was going to be at UL, and the day before, so this is the day before New Year's Eve, and we're sitting around the table, my dad, me, Jamie, and I'm chatting, okay, well, Jamie, what's the plan for tomorrow? Like, you know, he doesn't seem that stressed about it. He's having this big party, like 200 people are supposed to be coming. And it kind of quickly transpired that all he had done was to round up people to come. He'd done nothing else. He hadn't organized any of the booze. He hadn't organized any of the kind of cash flow, any of the food, any of the music, where do people park? Where do people put people to man the things? Like who's going to be there to responsible? So it was kind of a super frantic 24 hours where we kind of just pulled off this party basically. And sure enough, all these people arrived, and we had kind of like a burger stand, we had a projector, and we're showing kind of Victoria's Secret models, like kind of it's just a bit outdated probably now, but we that
was a Max Gander special.
It was a Max Gander special.
The Victoria's Secret model. Yeah. I thought that was as soon as you said Victoria, it's like Victoria's Secret model, Max Gander. Like two things go together.
Yeah. We had a cash flow, and Paul Bennett was kind of running the cash flow and kind of putting the money securely upstairs in the safe and stuff. So we managed to kind of have something going. Of course, some people like try to get in, break in, and do other stuff. So we had a sort of 10 of us that were kind of working that night. Anyway, we had, I think it was Ben Riley O'Donnell was on the kind of the clothes bit. And at the end of the night, it kind of gone okay. I mean, it hadn't been a total disaster. And a bit of a fight broke out over basically, I think some woman had stolen someone else's jacket, and there was a big fight. And then some guys got involved. And one of the guys then pushed another guy through the window. Glass went everywhere and stuff. And then Paul, I remember Paul grabbing this guy from behind and kind of like, and I'm grabbing the other guy. Okay. Anyway, we're going out, and they had another fight outside. We're breaking them up again, and then one of the guys like legs it. So we managed to capture him, bring him back in, and then we call the police to say, it's a bit out of our hands now. Because we're also trying to manage everybody else kind of leaving, and by this point people had a bit string, so they're also kind of just being a bit kind of Larry. And I think there's one thing about that group of people, it's that they just were a very nice group of people. There was quite intense. There's quite intensity about them. And they weren't rowers. They didn't really respect the boat club. They just saw it as a venue, basically. This guy kind of probably back then, he really pissed me off. Anyway, I was manning the hot dog stand. I was in an apron.
Yes.
And I called him up and rope tackled it, and he did. He kind of, I think he sort of knocked himself out, and
he knocked himself out. That's the line. Yeah, it was nothing to do with you.
Well, he was just and then he was really acting up to it, and then the police arrived, and he was kind of like, he was like, I've just been like knocked out, and the police were like kind of took it quite seriously. Like, hey, what was happening? He was like, I got jumped by like 5 people. But that was that, and that was the party, and Jamie was then banned from organising parties again at UL.
When you organise a party so good that it only takes one party to get you like banned, like you've completed it, right? After
one
you've
party out.
Basically.
Yeah, right.
I was funny when Tom's asking like, so is that what happened with this story? And you're like, how much do you know about this? Okay, this has got legs.
I got you. Yeah, I'd heard that from a few different people. That's funny. So you also enjoyed the uni rowing?
Yeah, I think as soon as I got into it, I absolutely loved it. So that first year was then in the second 8, and I remember racing bucks. And I think we came 4th, but we were so close to getting a medal. I realized, God, this is amazing. You can kind of like get in, and I think I immediately kind of felt kind of at home with the squad, and they were drawn from kind of the great thing about UL is they're from everywhere in London. So everyone's from different universities and studying different things, but they're all kind of coming together to be part of a squad, and that was just amazing. And also probably a bit different to rugby in the sense that the guys still love to go out and have a good time, but they also kind of really wanted to win races and to do the best. I kind of thought that was really cool. Then I was in the first 8 for Henley. Henley got knocked out on Thursday, I think. But then second year, kind of back into it and then trialed. And I remember doing a 6:17 at Boston that year and being like, that's great. It's beating my PB from school by 1 second. That's me. I'm the kind of like, I'm happy with this kind of level. And then we actually had a really good 8 that year, and we kind of got a bit further at Henley, and then I was a captain for the third year. And I think at that point it was kind of, we've got a really good squad here. We want to take this kind of a bit more seriously. We just had a really good squad, really good group of guys, and we just wanted to be the best university team in the country. And I think we sometimes were. I think we were the fastest at head of the river that year. and then we came second or third at Bucks. John Collins never lets me, always reminds me of this. Is that he beat me at in the Cox 4 event for the University of East London with Al, I think, and some of the others. I can't
Tom
remember.
Wilkinson was.
I don't know who else was in the 4.
So with a fully paid up crew.
yeah. But John was like, well, you weren't the fastest actually, because and then we won Henley, and I was then in the 8 for under 23s. And maybe a story of my life. I again thought, okay, that's me done. I've done GB, and I've done my last 5K, and I'm happy with that. I got sort of 6:04 or something, and I thought that was pretty good. And so I felt like at that point, University Row was awesome, but that's me kind of done.
I love how your measure,
and then that same go on.
I love how your measure of like being done with rowing is like, right, no more 5Ks.
Oh yeah. Like I say to people now, like occasionally I'll do a half hour 8:20 or a 2K, probably like one or two a year, maybe just for fun. But I will never do a 5K again, ever. Like
I think that's
stuff that.
Yeah, it just isn't. I don't think it's my choice of test. I think everyone's got a different test that would be good. I'm much more of the do a 1 minute.
Does anyone choose? No one chooses 5K.
I think it's like a stand would choose a 5K. Like if you're thinking everybody else has to do that same event.
Oh right,
and
I'm better.
How relatively better are you on that? I think people with good engines, good kind of aerobic engines.
Well, 5K doesn't sit with me either, so I think that's all three of us at the table.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're going to do beach weights. And
then... so you did under 23s in 2012, and then thought it was over, and it wasn't.
It was. I think also really good timing that then Shep was putting together an 8 to race at the Europeans, and invited a group of us from the under 23s down for that, and then we got to train at Caversham during that kind of awesome summer. And I remember us training at Longridge, and this family clapping us, thinking that we were the Olympic 8, and coming in and doing autographs and thinking, this is kind of cool. This is really, I get used to this.
I remember at Longridge at one session when Christian just started tearing Fred Gill apart. He did not like the Cambridge way of rowing.
No. And I was like, this is Fred Gill. It's just stroke the Cambridge 8. It's just he's up there.
I was happy for once because they weren't focusing on me. I remember in that 8, I was working my ass off in UT2, and then I got called into a meeting with David Tanner and someone else, and they're we're looking at your watt output, and it's low compared to the rest of the crew. You need to work a bit harder in your UT2. So they're spending the rest of the summer just cranking on the foot plate.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, good effort. That's how we got around. That was
a fun project.
Super fun 8, and I think it just felt really fun the whole time. I think we hadn't had a massive amount of selection for it. There was a few people kind of on the outside, but it felt like the crew was kind of already set. It was probably just Shep's project a bit.
Yeah, there was when we first got into it, it was a bit worrying, and then there was a last 2 seats were a maybe, and then a couple of people got injured, so that kind of made the decisions. The crew was set quite early on, which eventually meant obviously when George hurt his back, Pete came in last minute. But other than that, it was considering compared to under 23 and coupe campaigns, it felt like an amazing amount of time to spend in one crew. Yeah.
I remember talking to Scott in the gym at Caversham and being like, are we in? He was like, yeah. No. Oh, cool.
Great. I couldn't count on it. I remember I went after that race, I went to Turkey, and I'm sure I've told this before. Sorry if you've listened to it. I remember I was sat on a beach bar cafe in Bodrum. I didn't have internet, so I just got Wi-Fi thing of internet. There was a band playing Animals, House of the Rising Sun, and I opened my emails, and there was an email from David Tanner, and it was you've been invited to join the senior team for training for next year. And I was like,
after.
Yeah. I didn't believe it until I got that letter. I didn't believe I was going to get called up.
Yeah, I think that time. I think that's taking the team from the Europeans in. I think that was a pretty special. So it felt like a group of us kind of were going on it very much like a trial basis. And I don't know how much you guys kind of thought this, but I really had no idea what I was doing there. So I I didn't, for my entire first year in the team, not even know we had physios. I'd never used a physio before. So I didn't even know you had a physio on site. I hadn't even just...
Mate, I was in there every day.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were. I was like, so it's not the crew room. Like, what's going on back there? And I was trying to do a master's in London. I was living in London for the first bit. And I didn't even know that you trained 3 times a day. I didn't even, like, when I got the program through, I was just sort of, this is like a program that's got like more, you're supposed to be doing this full time.
Yes.
And I think that sort of timing was really good in the sense of there's a group of you guys who had trained for a bit of time beforehand to get to this position. And I was very fortunate to be in an environment where I could learn from you guys really quickly about kind of that and what you needed to do. So quickly dropping my master's basically and then moving out of London. But I think it was a real kind of shock how, like, what the standard and what the sort of environment was going to be like.
Maybe like in good.
I just remember seeing your VW camper van at Caversham and being like, that's Tom, like, it's absolute legend. Like, I was like, oh, I don't know how long I'm going to be around here for. Yeah, I was just more used to, I have to admit, I'm more used to dropping my brother off actually, for the years that he was doing kind of juniors, than I was expecting me to kind of be there. So that was a kind of real sort of change, I think, for me.
I'm glad you enjoyed the sight of it because most people just used to laugh at whichever random old rusty car I decided to turn up the Caversham in.
Yeah.
The time I got that fully rusty Passat, had the rust paint, that was quite funny.
Yeah, it's
I find it like when we go on a circuit and like, or just some random rain clouds, be like, oh, is Tom still got that rusty car? And I'm like, which one?
It's the Beetle that's out there.
Yeah. How did you find that 2013 then? A bit of a baptism of fire.
I think I had an amazingly fortunate year. I think it was maybe even almost too good. So getting invited to training camp in Sierra Nevada, and I shared a room with Gregors, and I didn't even know Sierra Nevada was. I didn't even know that you would go on a training camp and just erg.
Yeah.
So I remember putting the first 16K, first day get up there, first morning, first erg is a 16K. And I remember putting like a 149, and just thinking it was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but that was just what everybody had to do, and then was just completely written off for the rest of the 2 weeks.
Yeah, so this is altitude training camp. It's 2,320 meters up.
Good knowledge.
See, I had that sticker. I used to have the sticker on the window.
Yeah.
Sierra Nevada 2,320.
Well done.
I spent too much time up there. So yeah, like it makes you feel like you can't breathe, and obviously the consequence of that being it makes ergos feel horrible.
So when you went up there, did you not get a training program, like to be told like what you're going to be doing for the next like 2 weeks?
I think a training program pretty much simultaneously when you kind of heading up there. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just super. I hadn't spent enough time at that level, and I think in a way I could have maybe could have benefited from a year or two at Leander, that sort of building up. But I went from kind of university rowing, 2 years before I'd been playing rugby, and then I was in the national team, in the national squad.
But I also think that you could have easily like psyched yourself out of it. Like you just kind of would like just do it as it comes.
Yeah, and maybe do it as it comes. And I remember being in a room with Gregors, and the second night we were there, Odgie came in, and they watched their Olympic final for the first time together, and I was like, "What am I doing here? This is amazing!" And I've got these are, you're talking about kind of idols in rowing. For me, those two were so up there, and I was just sitting there, and then Gregors and I would just watch movies the whole time together. I just, this is just amazing. Train, kind of just chill out, but of course the sessions were really hard, and I think that jump up in standard from kind of feeling like I could do a UT2 and do a half hour, and I was kind of, I guess, at university level on a train for 3 level, I suppose, kind of one of the stronger guys, to very much be an environment where I was 604. I was the absolute one of the weakest guys, and but really enjoyed kind of that period. And I suppose the year I came back and then did the 5K, talking about 5Ks, and I again I sort of went off way too hard, and I think my PB beforehand had been a 16:04, and anyway, I was trying to do it. I thought for some reason I because I'd done one Sierra Nevada, I now could do a 15:30, and so I just sort of went off holding kind of 1:33, completely blew up. Had a lactate of 20.3 or something like that, 20.1 or something.
Isn't that like lethal?
But I remember bombing out. I had 1,500 meters to go. I just remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. And just the splits then going up to like 2:07, I think. And I was like, but I just do not stop. Never stop. And and then I remember just passing out. Well, I can't pass out, but falling off the ergo at the end, being sick. And then Hodgie coming up to me in the change room being like, put his hand on my back and just being like, something that felt kind of good. But I was still kind of just retching and just had this thing. And I remember Mark Homer saying that he thought my lactate maybe had even been higher. But because I'd been now working the lactate out in the last sort of 5 minutes or so, that it kind of come down a little bit. But that was I think for me, the standard had a massive jump up, and I was maybe trying to bite too much off it too quickly, not really knowing kind of how long it takes to kind of get into standard. And then getting selected to go to Australia with the first World Cup.
That was a tough one. You kind of spare man out there.
I was spare man. Yeah, it's very much spare man. So I was out just as the only spare. So I was just in the single training out there, but it was amazing to be in Australia, with the guys, and just thinking I was now involved in this very cool environment. I shared a room with, Jamie Kirkwood, and while he was out, I sellotaped all his belongings in UL tape.
Because he's imperial.
And I think at that point you always carry a stash of UL tape. You never know when it's going to be useful. If that's going to be repairing boats, or sellotaping all of Jamie's kit together, and everything is wires on his laptop. And then I remember doing a 2K out there. So that's right, I had to do it when everyone else raced. I had to do Jurgen asked me to do a 2K, and so I kind of put an ergo together in the car park by the kind of course in Sydney. And I remember doing it in the shade of a container and waiting for the kind of speaker to go attention go for the race of the 8, and thinking I was going to race them out. So I kind of set it all up, and Tarrant had finished his race. I think he was in the 4, and he came to kind of cheer me on. And just as I started, it went attention go, the sun just went ding above the container. So I just sort of had this I was like, I've already started, you just go now, go. And I completely blew. And I think at that time I was kind of always trying to go for sub 6. So I was kind of hold 129, hold 129, hold 129. And I just blew at the end. And again, did a 6:04. And I think Jurgen actually came over at the end. I managed to see the end of my race, actually, which was good. But anyway, that then year, in terms of the whole year, trying to break 6, managed to just do a 5:59. Then was in the 8 for the World Cup in the bow seat at Dorney. We had a good race in the final. We had a terrible race in the kind of qualifiers. And it was kind of the first time the guys were all racing basically again since the year before. But I was very aware that I was the odd one out in that boat. So we kind of was very conscious of the fact that I might have been the one, I was the one that was slowing it down. So I really felt for the final sort of, okay, I remember talking to Hodgie in the jacuzzi, about kind of how do you, I think I might just be going too hard. He said, just row as well as you can. But don't worry about the effort, just row as well as you can. And I know it was just really good advice, and did row as well as I can, I thought, and it was really bumpy, but we kind of rowed, I think it's 8 really well, and we won, which was just the most amazing feeling. And then I was in the 8 for the ladies played 8. And we had a really good kind of campaign and won. And so that kind of, suddenly at that point, I just thought, my rowing's just gone from this to, this is amazing. This is national team rowing is, not that it's easy, you have to work hard, but God, you can just go around and win everything. This is amazing. We set the course record at Henley, and it was just a sort of really awesome time. And then I was selected to go to, I missed out our trials. I missed out us being in the pair together. Because there's part of that story was, I was in the pair with Fred.
Yeah.
And then, I was paired with Lance first, and then Fred. And then Fred and I, he didn't have a very good Sierra Nevada. And we just had a very difficult kind of Boston trials, and I went to Australia. Then he kind of stopped rowing kind of afterwards. I remember him telling me in the gym at Bisham, and he just was so resolute about it. I was just really impressed that he was kind of made a decision. And then
unreal what he did whilst also having diabetes.
I remember seeing him in Sierra Nevada, like all the lights have been turned off in this huge kind of sports hall, and he's right at the far end in the middle of doing a 20K by himself, just still kind of doing it.
Yeah, I shared a room with him,
yeah.
and he used to have to get up at least once, normally twice in the night to eat in order to keep his blood sugar level. So he, bless him, he would like do his absolute best to stay quiet, but I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and I can like the lights on in the toilet, like you can hear the fan, and I can just hear him like,
Really?
I was thinking, Jesus, guys,
I didn't know that.
yeah, no, I know, like there's so much more that he had to deal with. Like, very impressed, but yeah, he pulled out. It was like a couple of days before a bit.
Yeah, and then we went to it, and you had to swap sides, I think.
Yes, I'd rode stroke side as an under 23, but I hadn't been on stroke side for like 2 years. But I had been struggling with my back injury, and I'd been stuck in the single, and I can't remember who it was. Someone came up to me and was like, "Do you fancy going in a pair with Ollie on stroke side?" I was like,
Definitely
I'm going to say no. Yeah, I was like, no, do I have to? Oh my God. No, I was like, I'm in, let's do it. And we had Phelan looking after us, which was awesome.
I remember telling us about having like a Satsing catches. That was always what he was saying, trying to get us to chop it in.
Yeah, I always remember as well, we're watching, he's filming us, we're going through the gorge.
Yeah.
Which is like a really nice, like high sides and like really windy stretch. And we're rowing down and we're watching this on video analysis, and just in sync without saying anything or realizing, we both take outside hand off and dip it, put it back on, and then on the next one, like inside hand dip it and back on. And I was just like, I think even Phelan looked at us and was like, okay, that's pretty good, boys.
It was. I remember like, it was really good. I also remember there was like a thunderstorm. I was being super close to like this thunderstorm. Like it landed like almost on the lake right next to us, and we were rowing back. Anyway, there was, I just remember a big epic kind of first of theirs kind of in the air. And
I still, do you remember we watched Project X?
Yeah.
And the film that has the song, Yes.
Yeah.
Heads will roll. And then, like, all the way through this camp, like, afternoon sessions are, like, so knackered. We're like, Ollie, put it on. So I put Heads will roll on. And we just, like, get up for the session. And still that, like, I love that song. Like, from that memory, from that camp,
Yeah. Oh, man, I remember that.
So that was 2013 we're talking about. And you were in the 8. That was a pretty mean looking 8. Yeah, like one of the best GV8s like I've ever seen. Like it's kind of on par with the 2015 for me.
Oh, so I wasn't in the 8 for Worlds. So then I then went to Silveretta, and they basically had selected the 8 and the 4, and we were trialing for the pair, and it was between Gottrell and myself on bow side, and it was between Fody and Paul on stroke side. And we spent the entire Silveretta, every piece was kind of judged, and we'd be swapping around. And,
that's tough.
And it was really intense actually. And I think, I remember it sort of in a way, the entire environment was kind of so unbelievably kind of out there and epic. It was kind of, we were staying in these huts on the bottom of the dam, and it was just, atmospherically, it was kind of like misty mountains, but we were there kind of doing this training, and it was kind of mythologized in the national team. It would be where Hodgie had proposed to Acre, you can come back, and it would just be this whole place that was really sort of symbolic of British rowing. I think Jurgen specifically. But we were kind of racing each other the whole time, and I remember meeting at the end of it, and Jurgen said, "I can't split you guys at all. There's been 2 weeks and can't split it." So we came back and we did a race off, and we swapped, and Fody won both legs. I won one, Gottrell won one, but my times were faster. So Fody and I went in the pair, and went to Worlds South Korea, and it was really cool. And we ended up winning the B final, which I think was a good result for us. I think in our semi-final, we had 3 medalists in the semi-final that went on to medal. So I think it would have been a stretch for us to try and get in. But we ended up beating the European champions that year. And just Fody's, I think, was such a good rower that I learned a massive amount. So I'd had this unbelievable first year, basically, in the national team, where I'd gone to Australia, I'd gone all these training camps that I didn't even realize you could go on, and then had raced the World Championships in South Korea. So I just had this kind of great year, basically.
So then that kind of fired you up. You definitely wanted more? obviously. No plans on quitting at that point.
No, yeah, no. I think once you've
done final trials with Tom in a pair.
Yeah, this you come to get better. So maybe I should have stopped.
Did you feel by the end of that year, do you feel like a sense of like, okay, I'm handling this sort of training and stuff now, or was it still like pretty crazy?
I think I felt like I was making some improvements, but I think I was maybe taking it for granted a little bit. I think that I just made such a jump that I was like, now I'm really good at row. And it's kind of come, not necessarily too easily, but I just kind of suddenly got into the world's team. People spend a lot of time working with it. I just sort of found myself there, and I kind of was working for it, but was in the right place, I think. And so I was loving it, but I was probably taking it for granted. And the thing I probably took it for granted was this kind of, you have 3 weeks off at the World Championships, and that's kind of end of the season. And I think a lot of the guys would take a week or 2 weeks off and we kind of built back into training. Whereas I was trying to juggle lots of things and loved the idea of having lots of things on my plate and like enjoying that, and decided that I would spend 2 of those 3 weeks since we were in South Korea in North Korea. So I'd signed up to go on this tour, go via Beijing into North Korea, and had a sort of really interesting time. But definitely came back to the team and realized that's kind of not what you do as a kind of like athlete. You know, everyone else had kind of gone and really relaxed and led into that, and then started training again. And there I was kind of sort of trying to be this sort of person that was kind of going around the world and seeing different things, but kind of taking it for granted a little bit. So absolutely ready to start the next season, but it was definitely a different experience.
Yeah. And in terms of like training load, did you struggle with injury at all, like throughout your rowing career up to this point?
Not really. I think that was probably just very lucky. I think that I didn't really get injured, and Dan hadn't been injured at that point. I mean, I hadn't seen a physio in that entire first year.
Yeah, I know
being in the team, I didn't even know that you could see a physio, that there were physios that would be there to help you kind of rehab. That would have been, I should have 100% made more of that and understood that more, but just kind of hadn't been injured, so hadn't needed to.
Would have been good if someone had told you that was available as well, though. Not Caversham, not known for its communication at times.
Yeah, but that's probably not expecting someone to be that naive, quite that, yeah, off the scale.
Yeah, Charles Cousin was also like talking about that like little bit of obliviousness when you like come to the team, but also like it seems from the outside that it's like very much you just kind of like assume things. Like Al Sinclair started like training with the team, and he was at Bisham, and he was talking to Christian about, you know, whether he needed to like book some time off work in order to go on training camp.
Yeah,
Christian was like, "Yeah, man." So
yeah, that's crazy. He said that he didn't even really know that he was going to Rio until like kit day.
Listening to him, I didn't. So I would have told him that he was going to Rio in like March. Like the other people that could have gone to Rio was me, as a sort of the non-traveling spare. And I could tell that, you know, you're better than me.
Yeah.
So you're going.
There's all these things you kind of bottle up. You don't want to ask stupid questions, you know, like from a coaching point of view, isn't it? It's so frustrating when someone, I didn't really want to ask a stupid. It's not a stupid question. It's not like you can ask. Yeah. So 2014, 2015, you didn't go senior worlds.
I was a spare, and I think that was almost I was a spare then for those 2 whole seasons. So I ended up going to both those world championships as a spare and then not racing. And I think that for me, looking back, was kind of first year, everything was great, it was pretty easy, but as everybody stepped up and the kind of team crystallized a little bit more, I was finding myself, no matter how hard I tried at kind of pairs matrices or seat racing, I was basically always coming last. Okay, there were some people who were in the team and kind of didn't stay in the team or came in and trialed for a bit, but I was always sort of kind of last. And they could have sometimes, I've done an amazing pairs matrix. And, okay, this time I know it's good. It's going to be really good. So I'm going to start from the top. And again, damn it, I'm right at the bottom. And I think that there were lots of things kind of happened in those 2 years, and some really good things about kind of developing myself as an athlete. But the team was fantastic, and I think I was always kind of up against it to try and kind of break into that team. And I mean, I was still there. I was still trying training every day. I remember a bit where I was, I think for 4 weeks, I was just in the single. There was no one else to row with. I was just sort of rowing around Cavish in the single, Henry filming, kind of coaching me. And, you feel very much kind of on the outside. You always know that you're in the boat if someone gets injured. You go to Lucerne as a spare, and I would go to Lucerne as one spare, and someone got injured. I think it was Langers got injured. Someone got injured in the 8 spider, thinking, great, this is my chance of going in. And then they put Mo in. He was already just raced and won. So I always thought, I know even me fresh is not as good as Mo, having just done a 2K. And so I spent those entire 2 years as a spare. Yeah.
Was there a super difficult place to be? Was there any sense, do you look back on that and sort of wonder why you did it, or did you have an idea in mind of like you knew you wanted to keep going and pushing against it? Was there any sense of understanding in like British senior men's heavyweight team between 2012 and 2016? It's like got to be one of the best of the years, not just because I was there for a very brief period of time.
It's pretty goated, yeah, as far as teams go, yeah.
I didn't think there was one time I didn't want to be there.
Nice.
And I think that's, even though I was coming last and trying and not it sort of not quite working, I was still there. And I loved being there. I loved I loved the training. I loved the kind of, okay, this is a challenge, and I want to try and make a boat. I think I can make a boat, but I always knew it was going to be on the edge. And there were definitely kind of moments where it felt particularly difficult, but moments where I also felt, okay, I've got the real kind of wind in my sails here. I've kind of cracked something. I've learned a new bit of technique, and I'm going to apply it now, and I'm going to win trials. And then, it wouldn't be so good. But I think rowing is an amazing sport for that constant evolution, that you can apply yourself, you can always get better. And so I think it's really gratifying to be in an environment where that's the case. And but at the same time, hard being in an environment where the standard is really high. You're going to have to really work your ass off to basically get a seed. And every half hour I felt like I was on the line. Every UT2, everything kind of always felt like a test of some kind. And I think kind of a couple of moments kind of stick out. I was racing the single net with Henry so the whole team got selected and raced Europeans, and I wasn't selected to go. So I did a single and raced Met and had Henry as my kind of coach. So there was just amazing there's lots of great people around. And I think I just reminded myself of, I think the hardest time was probably that build up to Amsterdam, where the year before I'd had a really good year. And then 2014 had been quite a difficult year, and I just hadn't quite got the results I wanted to. Bodie and I had come we came 6th in the final trials, which was quite good. But then after that, I think Bodie was then put in a pair with Langers. I was then in the kind of possibly pair with Phil, and then we didn't race Henley, and then went to Silvretta, and I kind of raced Gottrell, and I'd beaten him, and he had beaten me. We'd swapped around, I think, and then I'd beaten him again. But then he had gone to Aiguebelette, and I was a spare, and he had rowed really well with Paul, and I kind of knew that those two looked really good, and that was really good for them. And then going up to Silvretta, then Gottrell was injured, and I was in the 8 for the entire training camp, and I thought, okay, surely I've got to be in now. And I felt like I was playing a kind of good facilitator role within the 8, even though I knew I was kind of the spare in the 8. And I remember coming back to Caversham, and I kind of got there and was kind of in the gym, kind of stretching, and realized no one else in the 8 was there. And then kind of went out into the boat bay, and they were already kind of on the water, kind of boating. And Gotch was in the boat, and Jurgen just comes up to me and goes, "Okay, Ollie, thank you." And then I just thought, my heart kind of sank. I just thought, that's kind of the life of a spare, is that you're kind of there to fill in. So I think there's quite a few moments a bit like that. But I never thought that I deserved to be in there really over anybody else, because I knew everybody was really good. I was just it was kind of good to be somewhere where the standard kept on kind of being kind of, the bar almost felt like it was constantly being lifted. I'd kind of do a half hour and kind of just break 9K and think, okay, that's it. I'm sure you're going to get selected now. And then it would be like more likely you've got to break 39 now. And oh, what? How can I do that? And then I think that kind of, that sense of the standard always kind of rises.
Yeah, that's just awesome to hear your response to that, because like, who hasn't been in that situation where they've been at the bottom of the pack and they've been struggling, you know, and it's difficult and you keep trying and putting your best effort in. And I just think it's a common theme that always comes through, and one that I guess ultimately the reason why when I started struggling in the team, it was just got to the point where I was just not enjoying it at all anymore. And like, if you're not enjoying it, you just can't keep going. You're just fighting yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think that's really good to hear. Like the reasons why you would keep going, what you focus on, and yeah, in a certain sense, understanding that the task you're giving yourself is huge, but that's why it's worth sticking at.
So in terms of also, yeah, completely agree with what Tom said. And I guess being put on a senior program in the first year has like definitely like helped you step up. Possibly then like physiologically you needed to catch up, whilst like other people, like you said, were constantly lifting the bar. You said in the first show being in a team, you were still trying to do a master's. Like, was there, what was kind of like going on in your personal life during like those next 2 years that possibly could have contributed to different like set of results?
It's a good question. I think I've always loved kind of variation and loved having lots of things on and being kind of busy and sort of feeling dynamic because you've got other things going on, and loved kind of university rowing because you couldn't do that. You kind of do a course and stuff. And I stopped doing the masters quite quickly that I was doing. I was doing at SE, and but then was like, I need to fill this with other things. So bear with me while there's like a list of the most ridiculous things I think anyone's ever tried. But I was doing a kind of diploma in kind of complex emergencies, it was called, because it sounded kind of cool. And I was then doing, I was also doing a beginner's Arabic course at East Berkshire College. So that was kind of evenings on a kind of Thursday. And then I was doing kind of doing this kind of very cool teacher that I was kind of seeing to another kind of more time. And I think I loved, and I felt really attached to the idea of doing lots of things. I couldn't just do rowing. And I think that as part of the general story of the whole time, it took me a long time to kind of work out how best to kind of almost sort of respect that kind of personality, but also to not just do a load of random things that kind of were unconnected, just took up lots of time. I was never going to be very good at any of them. I'm probably the worst person. I'm so bad at languages, and probably the worst person ever tried to learn Arabic. But I love the language. I love the kind of people that would be associated with the kind of the language, and the kind of learning that in that environment. Just felt really cool. It was in kind of Slough, and there was kind of really cool people wanting to learn it for a load of different reasons, so I love that kind of side of it. But then why? I would be on my feet for kind of 2 hours and stuff on an evening. And I think I was always trying to do loads of other things in sort of my sort of life outside of rowing. So I think that definitely took me time to work out. And I don't think that all, some of it's helpful to have on the side of you, and we can maybe talk about that a bit more, but I think I almost try to do too much and try to kind of have that other side.
Possibly. I can definitely like relate to also like trying to do other things, and it doesn't matter if you're not very good at them. Like, it just matters that you're like trying, and like, some people just aren't great at languages, but like how great is it that you're still like trying, and like so many people just won't even do that. But in terms of trying out different things, possibly like then when you come back to rowing the next day for training, you're like mentally more refreshed, or you don't kind of like grow bored of it, Yeah,
of course. And it was always fun to introduce myself to the Egyptian rowers or the Iraqi rowers, like at the kind of water stand, to kind of say hi, and they'll be like, and then that would be it. I'd have to very quickly clarify that was all I had learned.
Oh, that's pretty epic. I bet they didn't forget that.
I don't know.
So 2016 then, Olympic year, another step on in terms of standard. Everyone says that it just somehow from somewhere everyone seems to find something else. How did that year go?
Yeah, they definitely do. I think I already felt like I was in an environment where I was having to every day turn up and try and push myself. Every UT2 ergo, I would be probably too much trying to be competitive about it and thinking, okay, this is the one where I'm in the top third of the squad. Jurgen's finally going to talk to me, or he's going to like And I think that was the so constantly like looking for a reason that would be good. And that World Championships year before, I'd been in the pair of Callum, so we were kind of like, okay, great, we can be in the pair now, so we can really target Boston. The plan is do really well at Boston and have a shot at kind of making the team, but knowing that essentially the Olympic team is kind of already set by that World Championships, and there may be a bit of movement, but not much. We just didn't do very well at Boston. Got beaten by some Leander pairs, and I that drive back thinking, oh my god, constantly back to the drawing board the whole time. Okay, reset. How do we do this? But one thing that was getting better was my physical side was catching up. So I started then kind of pulling better ergos and was kind of lifting more in the gym, and I think that was something a kind of real step change for me in that bit where I suddenly felt more confident about my kind of physical. No longer was I just trying to do everything I could to kind of just sneak in at the bottom of the team. I felt more confident about my kind of physical side. But the team was really good and was kind of already set. As a kind of year panned out, we always knew we were kind of going for maybe the last seat in the 8 maybe would be a seed, or if the pair's still open. But lots of things were changing. Fody got injured and he kind of was out, and that kind of whole flux around stuff, and you don't quite know what's going on. And then I think we went away on training camp, and suddenly everybody's kind of doing quite well. I think Callum and I were quite good at doing kind of the pieces, so we were always kind of in the mix. But I think it's because we were just always gunning it, basically, and never quite really learning how to row properly, and so kind of always up against it. And so we then, and then all the sort of, there was the 8 and the 4 were pretty set quite clearly. And then there was a lot of, okay, what's going to happen with the pair? And I think Al and Stu had done a brilliant job. I remember them doing really well. I just remember them smashing the time trial, and then the semi-final, and thinking, God, they've really clicked it. They're really good. But we were very much like not clicking, trying, scraping around, and just knew that we were kind of really on the back foot. And then I think that kind of March, April time, the selections are kind of coming, but there was no formal selection. I remember there was a bit where David Tanner kind of came around and just handed out these letters to people in the crew room. And the letters were basically, we've nominated you to the British Olympic team. But the letter said something like, we nominated you to the British Olympic team, but your selection is still contingent on the performance director's appraisal of your performance, or something kind of quite technocratic. And I remember sitting next to Paul when he opened it, and I was sitting there thinking, and he kind of felt a bit embarrassed because I didn't get one. And I said, no, show me. What does it say? And he, okay, we read it. That is, dude, this is absolutely amazing. This is, I was slapping on the back and just, this is absolutely awesome. Like, yes. And
your UL mate.
And I was like, I can't believe this is, it felt so kind of, the enthusiasm felt kind of quashed a little bit about people getting. And I knew I wasn't going to Olympics, but I also knew a bunch of people didn't get them. And also none of us really knew, there was no kind of, okay, this is the team, this is but it was just handed out. And I don't even think David handed them out. I think it was Morris, but David gave them to Morris in the crew room. Then Morris kind of handed them out. And I just sort of, anyway, I went home and wrote my own letter to the people that didn't get selected. And I kind of wrote it on a black piece of paper with white letters. I sort of wrote it to each person that didn't get a letter, and basically said, try to kind of put loads of enthusiasm into it, and said, it's my greatest honor to select you for the Shadow Squad 2016. Yes. You've worked really hard for the last few years, and you might not have made the Olympic team, but please be aware that your membership of the Shadow Squad is contingent on your performance not getting any better, or something like that.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's banter. But I just thought I wanted to make it, because there was an amazing group of people who also trained for years. At this point, I trained for 4 years and had been a spare now for 3 years. And okay, you haven't got selected for what you want to, but I wanted still to be, for that still to be something special. So then I gave it to Morris. I said, "This is some letters from David Tanner, who's asked me to hand out." So then Morris goes and hands out, and I put it. I also got the letter. The envelope said "private and confidential" on it, so it looked. I think it looked better than the ones that the other guys had got. And they had it out, and I remember that David Tanner then came in at that time. Oh shit! And all these guys were handing out these reading these letters, and he was like looking at like these letters. And I didn't obviously write it from me. I just wrote it from a fellow member of the Shadow Squad. Yeah. And then put some Latin phrase, I think, from dust to dust, from shadows to shadows, or something like that. And and then everybody opened it. And I just thought that as a moment, because again, there was no conversation. There was no like, you're not in the boat. Oh, you're in a boat, not in a boat. You just had to work it out for yourself. And I think, remember listening to Al on here, it's like, I could have told you were going to Olympics, but no one told him he was going, and no one told me I wasn't going. But I could see the way that things were going. It was very much those two pairs that were trialing, and we were this third pair that was a sort of kind of around, but not being selected. And we went to Poznan, where those two had this most almighty showdown, and just huge respect. I think all four of them, but we were kind of there as well. But we were racing the Cox pair, and there'd only be one other entry in the Cox pair in Poznan. It was the Turkish Cox pair. And we'd flown 2 flights to get to Poznan. And the Turkish Cox pair kind of led us for about 1,900 meters. And I remember thinking, I can't lose this race. Like that. So I just think I'm going to have to draw on like the deepest reservoirs of my soul right now to make sure that we do not lose to the Turkish Cox pair, having kind of come all this way and everybody else racing and kind of doing really well. And I'm sure Callum felt the same, and we managed to just sneak a win. But that was kind of us there. It was very much the Olympic. And then we didn't get selected. Well, we didn't go to Silvretta. Everyone else went to Silvretta, but then we went and joined the team in Varese, where we did the sort of Silvretta training camp, because then we were building up to the World Championships.
The Super Worlds, yeah.
The Super Worlds, yeah. The kind of, the Olympics and then the Super Worlds.
Yeah. So they call the Super Worlds because it's all the junior, under 23 and senior worlds. So the non-Olympic boats like joined together.
Yeah.
And that went quite well.
And that went well. I remember Jurgen, before he left, kind of, I spoke to him and then he said, okay, this is the plan, and, maybe get a medal. I remember telling him there, he's like, no, we're going to go win. And I just really wanted to win. We kind of wanted, a lot of things we had to learn on the way. And it was sort of this emotion of being in the squad and seeing them all go off to Rio and race and not be part of it, but be part of it. But we still had to train. Our World Championships were a few weeks afterwards, so we were kind of just training at Caversham, in the Cox pair, and went off and we kind of went through the regatta. I think really improved, but there was wasn't sort of completely linear. But we had the first race and we were last again to 1,500 meters, and they kind of rode through our heat to win the heat. And then I was in the crew room, and Roel Braas, the Dutch single sculler who had raced the pair, and I think he could have been a bit of a Dutch poster boy in rowing. And he, I can't remember where they came at the Olympics, but I don't think very well. But they'd been the kind of crew to be talked about from the sort of from the Netherlands. But he would come back from the Olympics to race their home World Championships. So we were in Rotterdam, and he came up to me, and there was no one else in the crew in the changing room. And he comes up to me, and sounds a bit dodgy, but we were both wearing we just had towels on. I was like, "Oh, what's he?" He came over kind of close, kind of awkward, and he said, "You and the GB Corps pair?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "My name is Roel Braas." I was like, he's like, "I have the fastest 2K in Netherlands." I said, "Go." He was like, "What is your 2K?" So I think I said it was like 5:42 or something like that. You
should have double bluffed him and been like 6:06.
Yeah, that's right. I think I went big.
Nice.
Thinking that might be the better way to sign them out. Anyway, we won the final, and they came fourth. But
Exome float.
Exome float. But yes, it was awesome. I felt a real campaign. And I think I was very lucky to have that World Championships, because for me, I trained for 4 years. And it'd been a saga of learning a lot, but not quite getting what I wanted, or quite kind of getting where I felt like I was applying effort. I never felt hard done by at all. But I also knew that it was hard. It was hard going, kind of always being on the edge, and always thinking, is this seat race going to be my last seat race? I'm going to be out. Was this paired race going to be the last one? And seeing kind of other guys come through, and rowing with Stu, and kind of just knowing that Stu was really, really good, and just thinking, how do you just be good like that? And so for me, I think I was very lucky to have an event that I could build up to, that could mark those 4 years, and almost treat it like my Olympics, and say, okay, this is what I want to do really well. Have a way of kind of ending it.
That was really good that you managed to get away with the gold medal as well from that event. Did you know you were going to continue, and how did you want to approach the next Olympiad sort of like differently to make sure that, you're not sort of like at the bottom of the squad, that you move through the ranks and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I went to Oxford. And that'd been something I really, really wanted to do. And I kind of go back to uni. But I don't think I had a big eureka moment kind of there. It was a bit further like down the line.
So when you went to Oxford, you weren't sure if you were going to go back to the squad?
No, I was really sure. I definitely wanted to go back. Kind of do another Olympic campaign. And I thought kind of a time at Oxford would be really good to kind of build that in. I just had a brilliant year. I think it was really kind of really enjoyed the course I was doing, and just being back in a kind of environment where there's lots of different things going on. It's really exciting, and
not being on the edge,
and not being on the edge.
Yeah.
But it'd be really good, and learning a lot from Sean and his approach, which is a much more kind of individualized kind of, I want to get the best out of you, and how we can do that. And big lesson there was, don't just go around pulling as hard as you can, which was kind of thing for me, because also pulling the way I can was kind of reinforcing a bad habit, I think, which I really kind of developed. And just get on the ergo and pull as hard as I can. Okay, there's ways of pulling an ergo that can make you go faster. So effort doesn't necessarily equal kind of performance. I think it was a bit of a lesson.
John Collins has something similar.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He said that in his double with Graham, like watching Graham row and like how he moved the boat, he kind of realized that, okay, like maybe I'm not making the boat go as fast as I can, but just pulling my socks off every single stroke.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But I think so. I had a really good year at Oxford, and then raced the Worlds that year, which we didn't do very well at. So I think there was a lot of, again, it was sort of outside the team was felt good, and then going back into the team was kind of felt like I wasn't quite being as good as I felt like it could be.
A lot of people finished after Rio. It was like a bit of a rebuild, a lot of new faces, 2017.
And then there definitely was, I think there really, really was. It was a bit of in many ways, from structurally, from the kind of the team down, but also the individuals in the part of the team.
And then you got reunited with Matt Rossiter back at the squad. So interestingly, that in the junior years, he was a superstar, but you kind of like preceded him in the team.
I think, I think he had a kind of very difficult time with injuries and things, and his rehab and stuff. And I hadn't and kind of gone into the team. And I think for me that year, so it was 2017 was great. It was 2017, 2018 that for me had this moment of a bit of a kind of like a reappraisal, more of a reflection about how I was approaching things. So I was I had gone straight into doing a PhD at Oxford. I was really loving the idea of being a kind of academic and a row and this kind of combination, and just thinking that sounded great, but wasn't really. No, and kind of look back, and anyway, I had a really bad pairs matrix in November, and I was like, I should be better than this, I think. But I was living in Oxford trying to do this work, and I then thought, hang on, I don't think any guys ever done a PhD and rowed at the Olympics. And I think maybe Kieran West had done one, but they hadn't made it, maybe. And I just thought, actually, no one's ever done this before. And actually, I think there's only been 2 women that have ever done a PhD and rowed, and Catherine Granger and Kath Bishop. So I called them up. I called up Catherine Granger and was like, how was it? What do you think? She was like, I loved it. It was awesome. You should totally do it. It's great. I know you haven't been in the team. Like, we really enjoyed having this combination stuff. It's great. And that's what Kath Bishop was like, what do you think? And she was like, should I carry on or not? That's basically my question. And she was like, well, only do the PhD if you want to have no friends, because that's all I did was row and do his PhD. I've just spoken to Catherine Granger, and she said I should really do it. She was like, well, it did take Catherine kind of 8 years or so to do her PhD.
Okay.
And she may have changed it once or twice or something. You know, she did it to go a while. And also, no offense, Ollie, but she's kind of one of Britain's top Olympians. No offense taken. But I decided to stop it. And I then didn't get selected to go to the training camp in Namibia that year. And that for me was a real shock. I've been in the team now for 5 years, and now I was not selected. I was going to Sierra Nevada again. And I was living in Oxford, and I was trying to kind of have a good time and trying to kind of do this dual life that I thought would be kind of cool. So I just stopped. I stopped doing the PhD, and I then came back from Sierra Nevada and had this stress fracture on my rib. And Jurgen said, okay, Ollie, it's not looking good. If he says it's not looking good, that is as thin as to being kind of my time out of the team done. And I thought, I don't want to be this guy that's just done this 5 years in the team. And I haven't really kind of got what I wanted out of it, really. So I stopped PhD and kind of had this bit of soul searching, and I was injured. Everyone else was going to revirs, and I was just had to rehab on the watt bike. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to try and do yeah. Well, I think there's something to be said about it. I think, but there's, I decided that I was going to do a PhD on performance. So I was going to be my own guinea pig in a way.
Clever.
Clever. But I was like, I'm going to be really weird about it. I gave myself this like training diary, and I was like, I gave myself a reading list of books I wanted to read, podcasts I wanted to listen to, movies and documentaries that I wanted to watch, and watch Drive to Survive and make notes about what's going on, and watch rowing documentaries and try to understand it, and really try to understand more about the sport, and kind of in a way fall in love with the sport deliberately.
How many times did you watch Gold Fever in that time?
Oh, it was my go-to thing to watch on the watt bike. But I did things like
the watt bike. You get into some the one thing I got on the watt bike. I really got into this this random TV show called Bully Beatdown, where they basically get bullies to go in the ring with like ex-UFC fighters, and like they get like £1,000 for each round they survive. But obviously the UFC knows his kid's been like bullying another kid, so just beats the crap out of him. And this was like my go-to to like, just get my mind off the watt bike.
That's a classic.
Or just like
that says a lot about you, Tom.
Just some level of aggression. I also remember weirdly just like the most eclectic mix of music. Just it would be like there would like be a Slipknot song, and then like Taylor Swift, and then
we had
just anything to get your mind.
We had so at the same time, Pete Reed was also injured and was kind of having a bit where he was sort of on the way out, I think. And anyway, everybody else was around training camp talking about songs. The two of us just trained the whole time together, and every morning we'd start the morning with listening to "I Would Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That" by Meatloaf.
Meatloaf.
Every day we'd start that, and that would just even now we send each other voice notes of that song.
The way like it's the long version, full version, right? 10 minutes, so good.
Not just the long version, but the theatrical version. The long theatrical version. It's all the different singers.
You guys went large.
Yeah. And we would just listen to that. The two of us, while everyone else in training camp, and we would just kind of maybe have a bit of a bromance about it. But that was a really transformative time for me. And I then felt like what I was doing was more aligned to kind of what I wanted to get out of it. And talking about...
Was there any sense of feeling like comfortable there? Like you should be there? Did that come already? Or like I'm no longer like the next man out. Like,
I think there was a bit this led to more of... So I think it just felt like I was trying really hard the whole time and never quite knowing what you needed to do. And just like, okay, I'm going to try hard. And doing things like, if you have an ergo test, thinking, okay, I'm going to, when the going gets tough, I'm going to think about my family or something like that. I'm going to be the guy that's going to hold on. And of course, it's completely the wrong way of looking at it.
In what way?
Well, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for a really tough time. If you're saying, this is going to be really, really hard, and when the going gets really tough, I'm going to draw on this reservoir of other things and that's going to make me tough. And okay, there is a kind of, I think, part of that toughness, but I say you're doing a 2K ergo test, for example, you've got to think a bit more about how do you do your best performance, and how do you perform well, as opposed to kind of how tough can you make it, and therefore how much can you hold on. I think it was a different mentality. Which button do you press? Do you go for the I'm going to work hard and then hopefully that's going to lead to success, or am I going to kind of row well or something and hope that leads to success, and then maybe the effort comes part of that. But I guess was kind of learning and thinking about more, and just guys going to a training camp, and I was sitting on the watt bike and was doing lots of other things. I broke it all down. And it's like, I remember having this sort of diagram of like performance, all the things that come with it, sort of nutrition and sleep. I bought myself a new mattress, and I kind of was taking, asking which supplements do I take, like vitamin D, vitamin C, omega-3, and all these sort of things that come into that. How do I rehab really well? Okay, I've never really done much core. Let's do some more core and build that into a routine. And what is a rowing stroke? How do I make the boat go well, and what kind of technical things do I relate to? And I remember that part of it being, okay, the coach might say something, legs first. But for you and your body, how do you translate that into how you actually feel it? And I remember watching a bit of video, and I thought, I'm just going to get my back on it up the front. And the coach has been like, yeah, that's a good change. Well, good using your legs. What? I'm using my back. But of course, like how your body language, how you translate what someone's saying into how you feel in your body is very different, like totally unique to each person. And I think that was something that I really learned, instead of just listening to the coach and just going, okay, I'm going to do exactly what the coach says. It's kind of maybe internalizing it and really working on it and thinking, okay, the end result is that you want to look like you're doing this because that's really important on your legs. But if you've got a really soft back, you are going to use your legs first, but it's not going to add anything to it. So maybe, for me, it was I needed to feel strong in my back would allow me to use my legs first. And I think it was this understanding of more about how I could be a better rower. It was all about the kind of performance that I was learning.
I think that's brilliant. Also, like that you managed to like combine that obviously with doing a PhD in performance, and naturally, like in order to use your legs effectively, you do need to be connected in your lat muscles, which are the widest part of your back muscles. So you saying like, yeah, I'm going to get my back on it a little bit more, to then that translating into using your legs more effectively. That just makes, to me, perfect sense.
Just to increase your understanding makes everything you do more effective. Like you said, every coaching comment is more effective, every move, every ergo. Like if you actually realize this, you're working towards this common goal. That's really interesting. And like a really interesting like outlook on like, I've been working my ass off for 5 years. I can't actually work any harder. What else can I do? And I think you've like come at that from a really good perspective and been like, where are the other bits that I could make improvements on?
I did I look back now, and loads of people were telling me this. I remember Langer's telling me in this, being like, just don't row so hard all the time. And thinking, well, yeah, okay.
Easy for you.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're like, and
thanks for nothing.
But there was lots of people giving me that feedback, and I think it was a hard lesson to learn, and one I still kind of was learning the whole time. It was kind of really ingrained, and it kind of whoever wins the race is the person that can go the hardest. No, it's not true. It's the person that wins the race is the person that's moved the boat the fastest. They may have not worked as hard as you. And that was Greg is saying that he sometimes would finish a race and didn't feel too tired. I've never done a race where I haven't felt like I've had to battle sort of life and death, and had this kind of in a dialogue during whatever piece it was. And I think that was a big kind of learning curve for me at that point.
So having made that step up in yourself and taking that forward, then 2019 it would be the first time you started getting in the men's four or racing in the men's four. How was that? Always known in Britain as the flagship event. Was there added pressure in that sense, or?
For sure, definitely. Well, we had a pretty intense bit of training and a bit of selection before Europeans in 2019, but I felt quite confident and just sort of, I guess, confident in my own abilities at that point. And we then got selected in the four and had a really good Europeans. I think we kind of came in it because of the testing we'd just done, kind of quite kind of on that ready to race. And we won it, which is brilliant. And then maybe we didn't quite kind of capture that momentum for the rest of the season. I haven't really kind of reflected on that, but I think we could have maybe didn't quite kind of hit the nail on the head as well as maybe we could have done after that and develop. But we had an okay season. I think kind of second in the World Cup series, kind of behind the Aussies, and then came third at the World Championships, behind Poland and Romania.
To this day, I don't know what the Polish have done, because they've sort of won those 2019 Worlds, and now they're like pouncing around in the B and C final. I tried to like speak to some people about it, but like I don't really understand that.
Well, I think they were quite good. They were more competitive then than they were now, but I just remember they sort of just took off in that race. That sort of 600 meters in, 700 meters in, they were next to us. But I think there's a lot of things we could have learned. But I think our focus was on the Aussies, thinking, okay, the Aussies are going to be on, and then they were just way off the pace straight away. And I think we were kind of looking at them, and I think, we weren't kind of like, okay, well, let's just go as fast as we can, and then the Romanians kind of picked us on the line, so it was an okay result, but I think it was a missed opportunity to have really put down a marker and to have won that race, I think, or to have won the race, and maybe because we were concerned about other things.
So still qualified for the Olympics for next year. Back then in 2019, we didn't know what was going to happen. We assumed obviously they were going to be next year, but like, they must have felt quite good to know that you've got your country its Olympic selection in the flagship boat.
At least the four's a little bit more straightforward. I think the others, the eight that's hard. 5 spots, but the 4, I think, is 9. I think it might be 8. I think. But once you're in the A final, you're then qualified. And I think if we had been scrounging around trying to get in the A final, then we would have been and we knew that was good. Of course, it's a job done to get to that stage, of course. But I think it wasn't, our target was above that. But yeah, you're right. It was a good feeling to qualify the boat, even though we maybe felt like third, okay, but not maybe quite as good as expression of what we could have done as possible.
Was that lineup in 2019 the same one that went to the Olympics? Did it change a bit in the same lineup?
No, same lineup. Same lineup. Yeah.
So quite a lot.
But a different order.
Yeah. So again, quite a lot of time on from them. Coming away from the drawing board, like maybe not quite the result you wanted from that. What kind of things were you guys focusing on in order to try and step that up?
I think although we were the same crew, there was like a lot of testing. So it didn't feel like, okay, we're going to be the 4 now for the Olympics. It felt, there was a sort of, I think in my sense, a sort of unease between kind of, okay, what is going to be the top boat? Are we going to go for the top rowers in one boat? Or are we going to have, we're going to try a bit of a mix. I think Jurgen, had said we're going to, both boats are kind of the same, but he was coaching the 8, so it always feels like whatever he's coaching is the kind of boat. So that felt kind of, how do we manage that? But I think going forward, it was about it was almost kind of going back into your individual sense. Okay, I want to win my seed. I don't know what the Jurgen's plan is. So although we were in the 4 and we ended up being the 4, it didn't feel like that was definitely the case from my side.
And then obviously everything gets thrown up in the air for COVID.
Yeah.
In that season. How did you? One thing I found fascinating, having spoken to a lot of different athletes and just high performance people in general, during COVID, they managed to find a way to step on. There was like so many people who've got stories about improving or doing that or using the time to do this. And I've always found that quite fascinating. How did you find that block on your own?
Well, maybe kind of jumping back just so kind of lead it. I had a really good season. I was kind of building up and then had a PB on my 2K. Everything was going well. PB 5K, building it up. I was like, yes, this is going to be my last one. Just 10 years later. I had more than that, actually. But it felt pretty good. I was in a pair with Sholto, and it was going really well. And then we had loads of tests. We were testing every weekend. And I remember that this is kind of February time, and we were testing every weekend, all the time. And there was a sort of increasing conversation about COVID. So my partner, she's a doctor, so so this is kind of early March, and we had this sort of final trials coming up, and she got moved, and I was dropping off at hospital in London, and she had then got moved onto A&E to be on the kind of COVID ward. So then I remember dropping in to see her, and she was wearing the called full hazmat suit and things like that. And they had this pod outside the hospital that was kind of for the one person that had got COVID. And it was all kind of, like, this is real? And then I remember driving in the day before final trials and Matthew Pinson being on the radio and him saying, I don't think the Olympics should go ahead because we should just move it to Paris in 4 years' time. I just remember thinking, my God, here we are doing final trials. And is this really happening? This kind of, I've been training now for 8 years full time for this. I missed out on the first one. And now I'm in a position where I know I'm good enough. It's a question of kind of which boat, and maybe I want to be in the top boat. And I think that them racing final trials, but knowing that there was kind of this COVID was kind of in the background. We kind of did okay. I think we were second in the time trial, and then we ended up coming fourth in the final. But I thought, okay, job done. No, that's good. It's okay. Wasn't our best final race. We wanted to win. But we then had a really intense week where Jurgen then split. Basically, he then put us in a four, and then put another four together with Mo, Jacob, Tom, and Ollie. And it was just going to be the two fours racing each other. So it was clear that we were now, out of the 8 of us, we were all going to the Olympics. But were we going to be a 4? Were we going to be an 8? And it was really intense. And I remember my grandma, she died that week, and we were going to have the funeral on the Saturday, and we were building up to having this race on the Saturday, and it just got really intense. Jurgen was now in a hut outside Caversham, kind of doing all this kind of communications from that. And he was just coaching this other 4, and it just became a really intense environment between our 2 4s. And I couldn't understand why Jurgen was creating this, and he was just coaching this other 4. And in my mind, I was like, well, Max and Rory have won trials. We've come 4th. The other 2 have come 2nd and 3rd. But I think we should probably be doing an 8, really. We've had the 8 best guys. Let's go for it. But we're kind of racing each other now. And I remember Christian as well couldn't speak to Jurgen. He even asked me to ask Jurgen, can you ask Jurgen how far we're racing, when the race is going to be? And the racing got moved from the Saturday to Friday. And we raced the other 4, and we lost them twice, really close. But Jurgen didn't want us to move the order around. There was a load of other things that felt like it was becoming sort of strangely, almost like he was trying to have this strategy. I couldn't quite understand it, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel the kind of post fun trials building a team place. But also we had COVID kind of all happening, and we finished final trials on the Saturday. I then went down to my grandmom's funeral. And Jurgen then called me as I'm driving down. So I pulled into this McDonald's. This is like 8 o'clock in the morning. No, this is probably 8:30 in the morning. And I remember pulling in the first place I could was this lay-by. And then he called him back and, okay, Ollie, you drive, how are you doing? Okay, you're in a safe place. So, okay, I've announced the Olympic team. Okay. Wasn't expecting to have announced the Olympic team. And he said, I've asked everybody to take a rowing machine home with them to train for COVID, but I've also announced the Olympic team, and you're in the 4. And I remember thinking, what? Is that good? And at the same time, I remember seeing this guy like bite into this like McMuffin standing by his car, and I remember thinking, what? I've trained 8 years. I'm here. All this COVID's happening. I'm here in a McDonald's car park, and I've just been told I'm going to the Olympic Games. And it was amazing. And sort of the funeral was that day. I was sort of bittersweet to be able to tell people actually some good news kind of thing. And she was a massive supporter of kind of my rowing. But then that was the last time, the day before would be the last time I'd seen the guys. We didn't see each other for about 4 months. I then didn't see Nikki as well for 4 months as well while she was working on A&E, kind of going through that. So we just trained at home in a garage. I think for me, I definitely listened to other guys who kind of really got better. And I always found that kind of strange that people got better by themselves outside of Caversham. I didn't. I definitely found the first bit difficult because I was sharing a flat with Morgan, who's in the team still, and Josh Bogaski. And I remember Josh had a difficult few months and wasn't selected. So he'd found the selection hard. Morgan had been selected in the 8s, so we had I got back after the funeral and we all had a few beers. This is kind of great. Not aware that kind of lockdown was 2 days away. And then the games got cancelled and then postponed. And I remember Josh being really happy about that because, of course, that gave him another chance and gave everybody else who hadn't been selected another chance kind of a year later. And I remember finding that a kind of difficult thing to, okay, well, you've got to reset now. I'm going to go back to the training board and get myself kind of selected. And I felt like I'd put a lot into getting the PBs and everything. And, right, okay, this is good. But kind of resetting it a little bit.
Obviously, I got to ask, elation of getting into the Olympics, but how did it feel to lose your membership of the Shadow Squad? Gutted.
Absolutely gutted. I had to write to the performance director of the Shadow Squad and give my humblest apologies.
Resignation.
Resignation. I never thought of that.
That's such a good story. So obviously, we all know COVID and how that all went down. So then getting back in the crew, sort of hearing from other people in the team at that time, was that really difficult? Did it feel like a struggle to kind of find speed again? Or
I think one of the things we tried to do was, I suppose everyone was kind of training and kind of keeping tabs on everybody. And I think actually, as we came back into a 4, I think we clicked quite quickly, I think, when I remember. And we started off with a bunch of racing M4s and the same 4 that we had raced and stuff. And I kind of was always thinking maybe we should be doing an 8. We then beat them. We then beat them terribly, but we then clicked and had a kind of go. And I thought, okay, we've now put that aside now as a kind of contest. But we still had this sort of lingering sense that did Jurgen would he rather have done a 4 with these other guys maybe? And so that always felt kind of strange, I think, as an environment. But yeah, I think we clicked when we got back.
So I was going to ask about the atmosphere then, like knowing that not knowing like kind of like which boat is the top boat. Also, like how did that really like compare to being in the Olympic, it's like the previous Olympia then, like being involved in a GB rowing team then, like was the atmosphere any different?
In kind of 2021 versus 2016?
Yeah.
I think it was the atmosphere. It was just the same, but also a little bit different. I think the setup was different. The Jurgen was co-coach of both the men and the women. Brendan was there, kind of putting his own stamp on it or his style. So it was still absolutely the same, but it was kind of different. And I think we had also, as a squad, hadn't won a World Championships in that Olympiad.
Wow.
And I think we were, on paper, a bunch of really strong, committed guys, but maybe didn't have that confidence that the 2016 guys had. And I think in 2016, it really felt like you knew what was going to happen. You knew who the best guys were, and you knew the kind of hierarchy of the boats, and most likely who was going to be in what. Whereas in 2020 and 2021, I think we just did so much racing against each other. And they were all relatively variable. There was definitely, I think, a group that I thought were kind of the top guys, but it was hard to know where you're going to put them in a boat, which boat were they going to be in. And I think that uncertainty was more prevalent, which I think made it a little bit more of maybe an anxious environment because no one quite kind of settled and had the confidence. And I do think there's two different, it's quite a different experience when you're in the team and you know you're one of the best, because you can relax and you can kind of, you don't have to work so hard on your UT2s. You can know that the pieces on the Saturday, you can kind of build them in and how you can develop. Whereas I think when you're on the other side, when you feel like every piece you have to do is, and I think the team in 2021 felt like that. It felt like every piece, everybody had to try as hard as they could because they didn't know who was going to, kind of what the boat was going to be and who was going to be in what boat.
Yeah, sure thing. Obviously, there's that little bit of calmness that you can like bring with yourself into training, like not knowing if you're going to get cut. There's like a different pressure. You can like focus more on like being the best athlete for the actual event rather than just trying to be like the best athlete for like every single piece.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And then obviously in the run up to the Olympics, like you said, in terms of uncertainty, there was only two races, the Europeans and was it the last World Cup?
Second World Cup.
Second World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Europeans, you won, but then obviously the main opposition not necessarily going to be in Europe.
No.
Had you seen any?
It's not Eurovision. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you seen any results from any of those other crews? Oh, which was really kind of in the dark. Did anyone really know how that was going to be going? Or did you race in the Second World Cup against?
I think we raced more or less the same competition, I think. Both in Europeans, which were in Lucerne. No, that was the World Cup.
No Australia, no New Zealand.
Yeah, no kind of beyond Europe. For both and for the World Cup, I think.
Yeah.
I think we kind of got back together, and the fall was going. I think I had a rough patch where in January I got COVID myself, and I remember thinking, "Jeez, man, this is now going to be my story. It's going to be 8 years full time. Got selected for the 4, and then I got COVID, and I didn't make the team. And I just remember that being a particular kind of, and I remember calling up Gregors and saying, "This is my situation." And Gregors gave me some amazing advice, which was, "This is the situation. You just have to, what can you do about it now?" And he suggested treating as, even though I couldn't do any training, because you have to be on this kind of strict recovery plan, to treat even my days I wasn't training as if I was training. So still having the same routine. So setting the alarm at the same time, doing 3 sessions a day. So my 3 sessions would be, first one would be stretching, second one would be a bit of watching some rowing videos, and third one would be a walk or something like that.
Very good advice.
And I think that kind of just brought it back down. And actually I then sort of recovered pretty quickly and was back in the 4. And then we had then Robin. So then Jurgen left in September 2020, which I think was a huge shock to all of us. And then Christian kind of started running, then Christian left to go to Germany. And then kind of Steve kind of stepped up, and we then brought in Robin, and we kind of had Robin Williams as our kind of coach for the rest of that season. And yeah, it felt like really exciting to kind of, the Olympics are definitely going ahead, which we knew it was going to be different. We knew there was going to be no massive after party, and it was easy to be like, why is this happening to me? Why does this have to be this one? But it was also, the Olympics are still happening, and that is, thank goodness that they're still happening. And not to put things on Matt again, but Matthew Pinson again was on the radio in like January when I was going through COVID, being like, I think the Olympics shouldn't go ahead and be bad. And he'd be like, I've spoken to lots of athletes and they think it's on. I was like, well, I don't think you have. And you certainly, this one athlete sitting here is very keen for it to go ahead.
Also, easy for you to say, you've got 4 medals.
I know. But I think that was, a lot of different conflicting, and I think that really played into this whole kind of, we're in lockdown, you're out of lockdown, should we be training, and what do we do? And I think that kind of uncertainty in so many new ways felt very different to the 2016.
So that's what I was going to now ask. Like, obviously with Jurgen and Christian both leaving the squad, obviously I imagine everyone dealt with that sort of thing like a bit differently, but like, how do you think that affected the team and like your mentality as well?
It's a huge question.
I know.
It's a huge question. I think there's a lot of ways to think about it. I think sort of being, I felt pretty gutted that Jurgen left. I felt like I'd spent many years building up this relationship with him and his sort of faith in me and kind of getting to this point. And then but I always felt very difficult. He was coaching the 8, and I wasn't in that. I really wanted to be part of that team. But he kind of told those guys, and we were all having breakfast, I remember, at Spoons, and he told some of the guys in the 8. I kind of couldn't believe it. And I suppose I sort of kind of theorized it and says like, why? Okay, what's going on here? So I then, but he was still speaking to Mo and a couple of the other guys, and Mo was saying to me that Jurgen really didn't want to go, and why he's left though? Why? I said, well, I think it's kind of some kind of thing where they didn't give him the contract for renewal beyond this. He wanted to just do 1 more year, and they couldn't. So he was kind of pushed out a little bit. No way, no one would do that. So I remember speaking to Brendan, going to see him. For some reason, we were at a pub, and Brendan telling me pretty clearly, I think, from what I remember, that no, Jurgen wants to leave. So I remember then going back to Caversham and being like, "No, you're wrong. Jurgen's just saying that to you because he doesn't want to let you down. And in my mind, I'd built this idea that Jurgen thought we were not going to win the Olympics. So he had kind of jumped before it. And I sort of had this we're not going to win the Olympics. And Jurgen doesn't think so, and he's left. And Mo is saying, oh no, and he's kind of speaking to Jurgen, and Jurgen saying that's not the case. But I've just spoken to Brendan, and Brendan's told me this. So I think that I felt very, I suppose, kind of on a side that I thought, okay, Jurgen's gone now. Just stop talking to him because he doesn't think we're going to win. And he's left us. So we're on our own now, guys. And I think that as it's kind of developed, just realized that wasn't the case. And I think that's become quite a hard thing to, sort of a reality about, can't control all things that happen. And sometimes people can kind of make decisions that maybe aren't always aligned with what you think. And I think, the one thing I think Jurgen, certainly I missed massively, was, and we had Robin that came in who was absolutely amazing. He's just a wonderful technical coach. But I thought in Jurgen you had someone who you could, there was a kind of trust. It's kind of a hard thing to explain, but I'd raced the Hansa Cup in 2015 and we did terribly in the sprint race. It was Stan at stroke, Henry was coxing Stan at stroke, Pete, then Gregors, then myself, then Sachi, then Paul Bennett, then Will Waugh, then Sachi, and then John Collins. And if you ever speak to John, you'll know that is
pretty packed.
But John's one of John's top races, as it was for mine. But Jurgen the night before said to us, okay guys, just don't come last. And I think that was this kind of pressure flipped around, being like, okay, we know we can do that. And I think, so when I think about the Olympic campaign, I think that was something we missed. As for us, we're talking about it, but the pressure became massive. And I think with him, you could someone who could take on that pressure. He held that pressure.
The Jurgen factor.
The Jurgen factor. And so I think it was a big deal.
Yeah, naturally, like somebody who hasn't lost at the Olympics for the past 30 or something years, like as a head coach, you kind of are that fatherly figure for the squad. So I imagine there would have been like extra level of comfort, like knowing that like you have him there. So I was just interested to know how the squad, like obviously you dealt with that, and I think you've covered that pretty well.
Thanks.
And then obviously running into the games, again, I'm kind of interested in the pressure of being in that flagship boat. Did that weigh on you guys? Were you able to just kind of try and do your own thing, or how did you run into it? Obviously, I know there have been some comments and stuff about people, not wanting it to go as well or things like that.
I think you're acutely aware of it. I think the what made it more challenging, I think, for us is that there was only one crew that could really be better than us, kind of on a sort of straight up drag race, and that was the Australians. And we weren't going to race them, and we didn't race them until the Olympic final. And I think we had, and no other crew had done that. No other team had faced that kind of. Every other team had raced everybody else all the time, and that's something that's quite normal. And I think there was a sort of, we didn't know how good we had to be, which I think was a real unknown. And I think that then was hard to navigate, because we knew that, I think if you were in the 8, you probably knew that you mostly thought the Germans were going to be the big ones. But you kind of had this sort of open agenda about, whereas we just knew the Aussies were going to be the kind of the crew that were going to be really quick. And we knew they were really quick. The last time we'd raced them, we'd beaten them. But every time before, they'd beaten every other crew, that every other sort of combination GB had put out. And we knew they were really good. They were really, really good in the 8. They had, I've just forgotten the coach's name, who was really successful in New Zealand, then won with the Swiss in the lightweight 4, and now was with the Aussies. And I knew that they had in someone who was quite good at kind of winning the big races. Mm. And I think there was an immense amount of pride, I think, of being in the 4 and selected. The guys that had raced in the 4 were the people that look up to as when you're kind of starting out. And I think I was really proud to be kind of standing on their shoulders in a way, kind of taking on that mantle. And I think I suppose we'll fast forward to, I felt so gutted to have let them down, and to have let the kind of, I felt that so acutely. And And I think the build up, I think, was maybe funny. I've diagnosed this a million times, going backwards and thinking about it. And did we do the training camps the wrong way around? So we normally do Silvretta, hard, miles, altitude, and then you come down to sea level and do a kind of some camp where you kind of work on your speed. We did the other way around. We did the kind of Varese and then Silvretta, and then came for a couple of days to Caversham, where we did a speed order, and then we were off to Tokyo, and then we erged in Tokyo for 5 days, and then raced maybe 3 days later. And I go, okay, well, that run-in was very different to other crews. And I think I felt kind of combination of, I know we're good enough. I knew that in Matt, Sholto, and Gibby, and myself had a crew that I think were the fastest 4 GB could put out. And I think and I think in those individuals, better than a lot of other guys that are out there, so a lot of confidence. And there were times when we would go really, really well, but I think there were also times where we kind of didn't have that kind of consistency. And I think that was something which I was really aware of. And we didn't do a very good speed order before we went out to Tokyo. And I remember calling up Nicky and being like, I don't think we should go. I don't want to go. I'm feeling embarrassed now to go, because I knew that you needed to have that kind of edge. You needed to have that kind of under the belt. And I think if you don't have a good race and it's training, go out and do it again and just bury yourself. And then that becomes the win. Mm-hmm. But we kind of had this thing where we sort of had the thing, we'll work it out, because we'd kind of got by so far with putting in the good performances when they really needed to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of pressure of knowing that there was only really one result, which I think looking back was, I don't know if many other crews have gone into a race with, you could only win. And I think maybe all the 4s that we've been part of have had that mentality. But I think that there was no grade, there's no spectrum, there's no, okay, we'd be happy with a silver at all. It was only win. And then maybe that was my own mentality a little bit, was that I had to win. It was only a win.
And I'll die.
It was, and that was, and I think we hadn't talked about that as a crew beforehand. What does that really mean as going into, okay, what is that going to play? How's that going to play out? And I think that was so I think we were very acute of it, very aware of the pressure. I felt confident, but not always confident in the consistency that we had, but very confident in the match day performance that we could put out. Yeah.
Obviously the margins are so tight, especially at that level. And like, it must have been difficult, like also not being able to sort of like rectify that speed order confidence with having to do like a mini ergo camp as soon as you get to Tokyo as well. And with the conditions being like unknown of the typhoon and everything, like I imagine that things like weren't really like lining up in order to just sort of like fill you with more confidence, like going into the performance. But like, I absolutely love what you're saying. Like when you go into the Olympics, you go in there to do one thing, and that is to win. So possibly whether that was the right attitude, like who's to say that? But that's in my eyes, that's absolutely the right attitude. You want to go there and you want to put your best performance and you want to win. Like nothing else like really matters. And I 100% stand behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to row any race. Obviously the final didn't quite go to plan. And you guys, unfortunately, everyone says 4th is the hardest place to be. I remember sort of thinking from my perspective, I know I sent you a message. Just from my perspective, it was just like, they fucking went for it. They went for it. They gave it everything. And like, that's what you're supposed to do. And I think we got so used in this country to just seeing the gold, and it almost had like devalued that as an accomplishment. And I think like a lot of people had to sort of realize in that thing that there is no guarantees. And that's why sport is incredible, because no one knows if you're going to get it. And like, it's that elusive thing. And, I said that I'd heard in 2008, Rick Edgerton had said that they were gutted because they didn't ever challenge for gold. And he was pretty unhappy with walking away from the final, even with a silver medal, knowing that they didn't go for it. And that's why in 2012, that 8 did charge for it. And they were so close to losing bronze as well. because they went for the gold, and yet he was happier with that performance than he was 4 years previously.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I sent you in that message. And from my perspective, like I've always thought, like if you don't understand the mentality of I've put my entire life to this moment, to this final, and therefore I am going to give it everything I can to win it, and if that means I lose it, then I'll walk away happy knowing that I tried to win it. If you don't get it, you'll never get it. Yeah. And that's why you're not a professional athlete. Yeah. And if you want to sit behind your computer screen and type what you think about it, well, you can just fuck off in my book, because like you weren't there, you weren't in it, you didn't know what it was. I wasn't. I have a sense of it from being close to it. I've never been in that position either. So that's kind of my take on it.
To paraphrase 50 Cent, win gold or die trying. There is no alternative.
That's a good 50 Cent. Always quote 50 Cent if you got a chance. It was gutting as absolute hell. I think it's the final played over my mind for weeks afterwards. Every night I closed my eyes, that's all I could see was just it unfolding. And I think it was just I think there was also just like I knew all those things, and I was very proud of the guys, because I knew what it had taken the kind of other guys in that boat to kind of get there, and I think it wasn't what and none of us are prepared for that. And I think in a way, I think we had gone in with the other things was we'd gone in with a kind of output and less thinking about how we want to do this and thinking about all the different scenarios that could play out. It was a super fast race. The Aussies are really fast out the start. So by the time we're starting to chug through them, there's not much course left. It's a rocky course. There's all these different things come in, but it's by the time I was across that finish line, just thinking, realizing we weren't even going to the medal pod too. And hearing the other guys, you just don't know how nothing. I was really gutted. And I was gutted for the other guys. I was gutted for me. And I remember coming back, because we had to fly back 48 hours after. And so seeing the Olympics still going ahead and thinking, this has all sort of just been a surreal experience. I think it was also knowing that probably on balance, even though part of me is competitive, wants to win, that was going to be my time. I wasn't, but that kind of, do you go back and make it right? Do you, like all these things I felt like we could have done, and that kind of weighing that up was something that I think took a while to kind of navigate.
So just to obviously not point the obvious out, but you came fourth in that race, having just missed out on a medal. Like it was a split second sort of decision. I don't know if it came to the photo finish, but essentially what had happened was you guys were challenging for gold. And then in the last sort of few hundred meters, you sort of went so hard, you blacked out. Is that right?
I think, we were going so hard. And I think just trying to do whatever we could as a forward to scramble into that position. And I think there was, I remember thinking about 700 meters out, I remember calling it and thinking, yeah, we've got this. We'd practiced a bit of a sprint finish, and we had done some very quick pieces, and thinking, right, this is it. This is what we've been trained for. And I just actually call it. And I remember thinking then, but this might have been me adding to it. This is a kind of 2008 movement where we're going to row down the Aussies and we're going to go for the win. And then I think the next thing I kind of knew was we were kind of in this dogfight. I still thought we were going to, and then I remember seeing the umpire kind of pointing to like, Great Britain, and thinking, oh, that's me. That's the only person that can change this right now is me. He's talking to me, and I forget his boat. My God, we've gone completely. I kind of knew that we were kind of edging around, and it was hard. Of course, been kind of hard to steer, because you kind of get hit by the wind. It all opens up under the bridge, and so there's a bit where everybody kind of goes over to the side. And I remember kind of us being kind of a little bit kind of coming towards the buoy line on one side, and I remember, and then suddenly we were just we were heading in completely the wrong direction, and I remember having to go a bit light, and steering us back in and thinking and knowing that the Romanians and the Italians had gone past us. And just thinking, that's not what I almost pride myself on being a sprint finisher. And I sort of think I can live with the best in that sprint finish. And I think that just felt kind of, and I kind of knew already at that point that the race was done. And then we kind of come in and the Italians are shouting at us. And that stroke man, that he's coming over almost like wanting to have a fight afterwards. He was coming in, he comes sort of running over, and he's sort of, everyone's shouting at that. And I always felt like a different, sort of basically felt a bit like a horror film. Suddenly someone had changed the script, and suddenly we were watching a completely different movie. And I think that all, it was, well, it wasn't how we were thinking it would be. So it was
that's really difficult. Yeah.
I always, it sort of reminds me, obviously, only fools on horse uses it, but it's the commando phrase, he who dares wins, Rodney, he who dares wins. Yeah. And I generally think like, that's only really half the reality of daring to win. And I think the quote for me more is he who never dares never wins, but he who dares sometimes wins and sometimes loses. Sure. Like you have to, in order to put yourself in a place to win, you have to risk losing. You can't have one without the other. Yeah. Definitely. Obviously, in that moment, emotions and everything crazy. I mean, having sort of being a bit further back from it now, it's life. Sometimes things don't go your way. Sometimes things aren't. You can't go back and do it again, and that's the way the world is. But what you can do is kind of learn from that, I guess, and learn who you are as a person, potentially how you deal with something like that difficult, and also like. Hopefully you still are named in that British Four. You still are you're an Olympian. You rode in the British Four. You are alongside the guys that we all looked up to. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like there's some incredible things to be proud of.
Yeah. What we can say is that heroes struggle, and sometimes the best stories don't have happy endings, but like it's definitely part of a hero's journey. That they go through some difficulties, and they just, you stand up to the challenge. I completely agree with like what Tom said, and like definitely be proud of what you've achieved and how far you've come.
I guys, definitely right. I think you completely right. I think it's easy to sometimes see when anything goes well and think, okay, there's no other downside, there's no other risk that's happening. And I think as sort of distance has kind of gone, and I think I'd sort of made the decision before Tokyo. I think I wanted to call it a day. I was really excited about kind of doing other things, and it always felt like I'd be kind of putting things on the back burner, like doing ridiculous things like the other lessons, the Arabic, and all this sort of silly things. But I certainly felt myself really motivated for a bit when I got back, being like, right, I'm here to avenge that. I'm going back. I'm better. I'll be stronger, and I'm really angry at them. But I felt like that also wasn't how I wanted to be. It wasn't the sort of, I didn't want it to just be only worth it if you win. And I think it was there's a sort of inclination to think that it is a sort of Disney ending all the time, and that you're going to try really hard and you're going to win and it's going to be great but I also know that winning doesn't also make everything great. When I was younger in the team, I used to think, okay, I'll get a good performance if I'm just a bit more confident. And if I'm a bit more confident, I'll be confident if I just get a good performance. And it was this sort of like loop. I just felt almost like everything was on the line at a race. My whole sense of identity and who I was going to be. I'd be funny. I'd be more charismatic. I'd be all sorts of things if I just could win this pairs matrix that I had coming up. And of course now, being a bit older, it's of course not. You've got to work on it as a technical thing. Rowing is beautiful because it's almost that you're like a craftsman. You're crafting your tool. You're kind of really working on it the whole time. But it's nothing to do with kind of you as a person. You could win every race in the world and you never really thought twice about it. Or you could be someone who's hasn't had the opportunity to race very much, but they're out there every day kind of working on it. And that's the kind of thing that's really, really rewarding about the sport. I think Conrad Anker has a sort of phrase that it's the summit that drives us, but it's the actual climb that counts. And I think that's sort of this idea that it is the sort of journey, it's the process. And I know it sounds like a horrible cliche, but I think it was afterwards thinking about actually what would be the message to people who were asking kind of me for advice or my kids. And for me, I wouldn't want it to be, okay, well, I had to go back to the team because I had to win. And that then made it all right. Because I felt like I'd got all the juice I wanted out of it. And okay, I was going to go and race and we were going to try and win. And there was lots of things to learn about how you can do that and things that go well and things that don't go as well as you want and why. But also I think as an individual, it definitely took some time to navigate that. And realize that I think as an athlete, you get very tuned to being driven by success and judging yourself on that. And I think in a way it can be quite good, because it's a bit gritty. There's a Lance Armstrong documentary and he's cycling into the distance. He just says to the cameraman, I've got to get my heat on kind of thing. And he's cycling. Sometimes that's a kind of good fuel to be kind of a bit hangry and kind of go after it. But is it a good fuel for kind of life? I don't think so.
I've heard this, I can't remember who is it, Mike Tyson maybe, but another high-end athlete who said what made me a fantastic athlete didn't actually make me like a fantastic human.
Okay. Yeah.
Because just searching for that perfection and that win is not all that life's about.
And I look back now and I think, like, how epic was it to be kind of joining the team when we were together and me not even knowing there was a physio in the building in 2013, to kind of being the spare for 3 years and it kind of trying hard but then getting to be in this amazing squad of just some awesome people, and then kind of going to Oxford and then kind of learning much more about myself and performance and leading into that and kind of really growing as an athlete, and then being in a newer team that's younger but is also full of really good, ambitious, smart guys, and putting a team and going out there and representing that. And I think for me, for a period afterwards, I felt like I just had to go back and win. And that's what I was driven by. But a bit of distance, a bit of time, the message, if I was to tell myself, would go back and be like, that you put everything you can into winning, but it's too much more than just this. That was just kind of nothing to do.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I think the same thing about, like, the way I've kind of talked about it with athletes I mentor, like, if you have a huge goal and your goal is to go to the Olympics, if you commit to that and you commit to like getting the best out of yourself for the next 8 or 10 years, even if you don't get the end goal, the consolation prize is look what you learn on the way. Like, look what you learn about yourself. Look at the skills that you achieve. Like, it's a quote by a guy, basically, if you spend 10 years working out how to be a millionaire, then you become a millionaire and then you lose all your money. It doesn't matter because you still know how to make £1 million.
I like that.
And that's the same sort of thing for me in sport. It's like, even if you didn't get that, the consolation prize is better than the thing you were searching for anyway. Yeah. And that comes down to be like, life's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I think there was the Ronald Kipling If poem, and I love it. I live my life by it.
When I had done I did terribly in another pairs matrix. I can't remember when. I think it was 2015. And Henry took me to the like an all-you-can-eat breakfast afterwards, and he then gave me this framed poem of it. And I've had it kind of ever since. And if you can treat victory and defeat and treat those two imposters just the same, that is a wonderful line. And because you never know what the outcome of good fortune or kind of a misfortune would be. You never know what's going to kind of come out of that. And the other one is the sort of Teddy Roosevelt quote, which is, it's not the critic that counts, that points out how the strong have stumbled. It's this idea that it's you in the arena, the man in the arena. And for me, I think when I look back and I think I got to row in boats with Mo, I got to row in boats with super talented guys that are now still in the team. I've been a four with Schultz and Gibby and Matt, and I got to be coached by Robin and Jurgen and Christian, but all these things also happened, which also meant that I think I felt like I really learned sort of almost an accelerated amount in that kind of last couple of years. And that I think in a way there's the seeing kind of life more as lots of challenges, really. And okay, going to the Olympics is one challenge, but it's not necessarily the biggest one. It doesn't have to be the defining one, but it's serious, and you kind of want to scale them. And some you get to choose, some you don't get to choose which ones. You never know what's around the corner, and it's kind of how well you face up to that as a challenge, really. And us coming fourth was really tough. It was hard, but it's also been one that, for me, it gave me an opportunity to kind of understand what was really motivating me, what was driving me, and also kind of maybe an opportunity to put things in perspective. And so I think kind of looking back now, it's seeing kind of that rowing time is awesome, but it was one mountain, and there's everybody has loads that they're kind of tackling, and you kind of want to look back when you're a bit older and just see a whole mountain range of things that you've got stuck into.
Completely.
Amazing.
Completely, yeah. A career is so much more than just like an outcome or a performance. But also on a flip side, being fourth in the world is pretty incredible. And some people never ever get close to that level. Some people went to multiple Olympics and never made the A final. So like, I also don't really like this, looking down on like even something as such a pretty incredible performance, like being like top 5 in the world at anything is pretty great. So definitely,
it's the double-edged sword of being in the British system. We've had so much success. It's difficult to accept less than that. But I think your outlook on it's awesome. It's great to hear that you can appreciate and see that mountain you've climbed. I think there's a lot of athletes that don't see that, and potentially, and I've always said you learn more from your losses than your wins, and I think potentially you've been able to come out the backside of your career and have a better view of it, maybe because of how it ended.
So I feel like Churchill says something like, success is going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm.
So there you go.
Oh, I love that.
So much. I love that. Right, we better do quick fire round.
Quick fire rounds. Yeah. Out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, raced at, or visited, what are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorite training venues. So I look back now and I see Silveretta as something that I feared when I went to, and generally had an experience where I was either battling for a seat or I was not in a seat and I was kind of the spare. But I look back and just think that was absolutely amazing. And just, you got to see this mountain with kind of a glacier on it, you were training under it. I think that was, if I could go back and just do some training on that, I think I would that's weird. But I think I probably would.
It looks pretty magical.
It is the photos do look good. But it is kind of, it's grim, it's kind of Rocky-esque. Rocky S5, which is kind
of the dungeon.
Nice. If you were to repeat one race or one event when you're 60 or 70, what would it be and why?
I can't say the Olympic final.
You can if you want, but you don't have to.
Does it go the same way?
No. It's, for example, like what are some of the events that you've enjoyed so much that you want to like
experience it?
Yeah. Okay, so you either really experience it exactly the same way, or could I kind of arrive a little bit before the race and give some kind of like tips to the crew that's about to race?
Let's go with that one.
Well, the tips to the guys about a race are, I think for the before to be like, silver is a great thing. And I think maybe just myself, I can't speak for the other guys, only saw it as winning or nothing. And I think, I just got in such a frame of mind, it would just be that or nothing. And I think if I go back and kind of whisper into the guys' ears to say, you can be really proud of fourth, you can be really proud of third, you can be really proud of any result as long as you felt you've had a really good race. And in silver is no bad thing. I think I'd whisper that to those guys.
Question asked, if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you first really caught the bug for rowing, what advice would you give to that young kid?
I think I felt like I caught the bug when I was a little bit older.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of gone for this bit where I was trying to do more rugby. It always felt like a bit of a passion. And then I But it was back at UL, and I think it was kind of second year, and realizing this is what I wanted to do. I think the advice would probably be kind of really treat rowing like more than just a kind of man test every time you do anything. How tough can you be today? But to see it more as kind of how can you really develop this? And you don't have to work really hard, but you can. It's like learning an instrument or learning anything. That's you're shaping something, and to think of it more like that would be my advice.
Nice. That's very good. One last question: who are some of your rowing idols or people you've looked up to during your career?
There's some that's definitely up there. I think without a doubt, Alex Gregory, because I think was a bit of a mentor to me and the team as well. Always gave me advice and always kind of just gave me the time of the day. And was someone when I got injured that I actually went out on a pair with, even though he had retired. And he kind of just we kind of had this moment where he was really sort of talking me through how I was rowing and things. And he didn't have to do that at all. And I think that was, there's a whole, I think in the team as well, this sounds a bit weird. But I would get changed next to Pete Reed. So we'd share a little carpet that we had together. And I think for me, I only knew him in this sort of Rio Olympic cycle, but I also could see how he was navigating, perhaps going kind of from being in a top boat to now being in a different boat, just of being in the eights. But he had a real leadership quality about him, I think. And that has only, I went to see him after his injury, and he was in a kind of a ward of other people who were recovering from spinal related injuries. And I've never seen kind of inspiration kind of so visible of how he was inspiring other people around him. He'd written a training program for one guy. This other guy just wanted to stay next to him. And I think that I recognize that quality in the team, but I saw it lived out afterwards when he was kind of dealing with injury.
That's beautiful. Both of them are absolute heroes, legends, and we'd love to get them on the show.
Yeah.
Ollie, thank you so much. This has been great. It's been fantastic to hear your story, also how far you've come, how you've developed as an athlete. Thank you so much for the honesty. And yeah, I think you should definitely be proud of yourself. And yeah, you've done great things, and you're an Olympian. That means a lot.
Thanks so much, Pete. But you got to row with the much better rower in my brother Robbie. Is sort of technically the best one. I think I get away with just the brawn, but I think yeah.
we've had a really good handy campaign together.
Yeah.
No, appreciate it, mate. It's been awesome. I can't believe it's taken us this long to get this. I'm really glad we did it, though. Again, really appreciate your honesty on all those points, and because everyone struggled, and I think it's really good to hear that everyone does, and that there's a path through it, and there's a way to learn. And I was also super amazed to hear how you managed to kick on and push on again after having that kind of 2 or 3 years as the spare. But yeah, no, awesome, man. We'll have to do this again sometime on or off camera,
guys.
But
it's a pleasure.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, and keep up the great work. We've been loving listening to the podcast.
Thanks, man.
Really appreciate it. That concludes everything for today's episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.